Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a deep dive into 21 Pilots lore before the release of their new album CLANCY, because this story has absolutely dominated my life. I have not been thinking about anything else, which is so wild to me because 1 month ago I knew absolutely nothing. But once I started, I just could not stop, and I figured I'd take you guys along on the journey. Maybe some of you are curious, maybe you've been missing out and you want to catch up before this new album drops and all the rest of the story comes out. I can say with complete confidence this video is not going to cover everything because it's nearly a decade of story that we're trying to follow, so if there's anything that I missed or anything that you want to elaborate on or clarify, please say it in the comments. And I'm not even going to begin to touch on theories and Easter eggs and anything like that, so I would love to see any contributions that you guys have because I am so invested in all of this. I will say I've been a fan of 21 Pilots since like 2017 when they kind of got big with the whole blurryface thing, but I did drift away from the plot past that album. I kind of did not listen to Trench at all. I remember when it was released, I remembered that time period, but I kind of fell off. I fell away from it. I stopped listening then. I stopped listening to Scaled and Icy. I did see them perform a couple times live, but I wasn't really following the story of it all. I saw that they started to release new stuff and it was specifically lore-based stuff, but I didn't know if I could get myself back into it because it's been so long. And then their most recent music video, Next Semester, came out, and one of my friends recommended that I watch it, and since then, it has been the only thing that I think about. Within 3 weeks of that song coming out, it became my #1 most listened to song for the past 12 months. If that tells you anything, I am so excited for the next album, and I wanted to understand it as much as possible, which also shout out to my resident 21 Pilots expert for getting me back into this and for also sharing some theories and kind of showing me some things that I might have missed, and also for just reintroducing me to the joy of being a part of a fandom, being in a group of people that are so passionate about something, because it's been so long since I felt this way about anything. So to all of a sudden be thrown back into a fan base that not only is familiar, but that I know is so strong, because really so much of this band relies on the fan base, and I think that's so special. That's definitely something that's going to come up a lot throughout this video, is just the way that this band connects with the fans, because it's just so... I've never seen anything like it, you know? But when I was approaching this video, I really had no clue how to go about it, because again, it is pretty much an entire decade's worth of story and lyrics and videos and so many things that go beyond that, and I had no clue where to start, so I tried working backwards. I definitely had a fun time doing it. I love researching and I love going back and finding all of these hidden things that nobody even talks about anymore, but it meant so much in the moment. And I was trying to think of how to present all of this information in one video to where it actually makes sense and it's something that you can follow and it's something that will build over time rather than being released in random bursts that you have to piece together afterwards. So I figured, just for simplicity's sake, we're gonna go timeline. We're gonna start at the beginning. So if you don't know, 21 Pilots is a musical duo from Columbus, Ohio, Tyler Joseph and Josh Dunn. Tyler originally started the band in 2009 with 2 other members, but they left and Josh came in. I am desperately hoping that if you're here watching this video or getting ready for the new album or anything like that, you at least know that much. I'm assuming if you're here, you have at least a baseline idea of what this band is. These 2 guys mean a whole lot to a whole lot of people. Their music largely talks about struggles with mental health and doubt and questioning your faith, all of these kind of really big ideas that a lot of people are scared to talk about. Which reminds me, before this video starts, just a quick little content warning, because like I said, this band does talk about some more heavy topics, so if you are not in the right place to be hearing that, then maybe this isn't the video for you. They are important things to talk about, and these are things that we need to have more open discussion about, but only if it's healthy to do so. So if that's not the type of content that you're comfortable hearing about right now, then no harm done. Get out of here. Go take care of yourself. Let's all stay safe, yeah? Fans really appreciate how vulnerable these artists can be with their own personal experiences. I feel like that's a really big thing that ties this all together, is just the fact that people are being real with each other, talking about topics that are usually uncomfortable or shied away from, but it's kind of all laid out here for us to connect with, and it's just, it means a lot. I could talk for hours about the real world impact of this band and the way that they have helped so many people by connecting everybody over these shared struggles and showing that it's okay to feel these things, and the big idea of you are not alone, and just, it's so much and it's so special, but we can't be there for all of that. So talking about the music, they've put out 6 albums. CLANCY is going to be their 7th. They put out their self-titled album 21 Pilots in 2009, Regional at Best in 2011, Vessel in 2013, Blurryface 2015, Trench in 2018, Scaled and Icy in 2021, and then the 7th album is coming out this year, 2024. It's coming out on May 17th, which is just a little bit under a month from me recording this. But with that brief introduction out of the way, let's just get into it. 2015 brings us the arrival of Blurryface. I guess this isn't really relevant for the story because it's kind of just real world, but to give you a little bit of context of where the band was at the time, this timeline is going to start off on May 11th, 2015. That date marks the start of the blurryface tour. 98 shows around this time, a whole decade ago, they were already doing worldwide tours, and that's just so unfathomable to me. To think about the fact that they were that big that long ago and they're still doing this. I was just so shocked to see that number and to see how far they were traveling even that long ago, and now the world has expanded so much. So just for a little bit of context, they've been doing this for a while. And the same week that that tour started off, they also released the Blurryface album, which is kind of where a lot of their fans came from. That was kind of the album that really blew up for them. I will say I'm a little bit confused about the exact date because I've seen a lot of people saying that it was May 17th, 2015, which would make this release 9 years later, but Spotify says May 15th. Regardless, the songs are out. This album has a character called Blurryface who you kind of get to meet throughout the album, and he represents mental illness, specifically doubt and insecurity. That's kind of the big idea of this whole album, which obviously it's called Blurryface. I don't know why I'm explaining it like that, but to talk about the songs, because there's a lot to talk about just from the content alone, where they have the songs, they have the music videos, and then they have the actual concerts and everything else. But I feel like for my brain, the best way to approach this was to go lyrics, music videos as they came out, and then concerts and any other content as it happens. But the lyrics we're gonna assess as the album is released. So I'm gonna talk about all of the lyrics of the Blurryface album with what we knew in the story up until this point, which obviously was not much because this is kind of where the story starts. But then as we go along, we'll be able to tie in a little bit more information back to this album. And obviously, I'm gonna keep saying it, but I'm not gonna get every single thing. There's gonna be some lyrics that I'm sure call to future stuff or reference past stuff, and I'm not gonna catch every single thing, or I'm not gonna think that it's worth mentioning or whatever it is, so I'm just gonna try and touch on some of the big things that are very obviously related to future stuff. Throughout this entire album is the idea of fighting an other, but that other representing mental illness and doubt and anxiety and all of these bad feelings that people are facing. That's a huge theme of this album, and also, as we've already talked about, the band as a whole, everything that they put out kind of ties back into the mental health aspect of things. But stuff like Heavy Dirty Soul talking about smoking out the infestation in his mind, Ride talking about fantasizing about the end, Stressed Out, he says he's insecure and he cares what people think, it goes on. Pretty much all of these songs reference some struggle, some internal struggle going on. In the song Stressed Out, Tyler says that he wants to go back to the good old days when he didn't have to worry about it, but Blurryface, a manifestation of these terrible feelings, is controlling more and more of his life as he's getting older. Laneboy talks about how the band is battling with trying to be creative and following what they want to do, but also what mainstream media wants them to do and how they should be performing and what songs should be about versus what they feel like they want to put out. He sings, "My creativity is only free when I'm playing shows." The song Doubt could be related to somebody questioning their faith, but an interesting line from that is, "Gnawing on the bishops, claw our way up the system," which could be potentially the start of something because, as we'll see pretty soon, bishops become a huge thing. I do think for this song it was used more as just a word to tell the story. I don't think this far back they were planning to have the bishops as major characters in the story. I think it's more just hearing that word and then looking back and being able to turn it into something rather than planning it that far back, because there are some people that will argue that this story has been going on since 2009, and I do think that would be cool, but I don't think that's what happened. It's a lot more like they're able to look back at the old content that they've already put out and they're able to tie it all together now. The song We Don't Believe What's on TV also ties into a future album because exactly what the title is saying. If something is presented on a TV, you should maybe question it. In Message Man, Tyler sings, "These lyrics aren't for everyone, only few understand," which again goes into that whole idea of community and how people who are listening to the music, yes, you have mainstream listeners who are gonna get some takeaway, but you also have other people that are understanding on a deeper level. Either you understand because you can relate to the feelings, or you understand because you're following the story that they're putting out. That song also touches on his feelings of how music can act as an escape, to where if you're not feeling your greatest, you can pour it out into your music, and then through that you can connect with other people. Hometown has the line, "Where we're from, there's no sun, our hometown is in the dark," which could also potentially tie to future stuff. It's a little bit hard to make note of the lyrics from these albums because this is very much just the bits and pieces that will come together to make a story, but at this point the story wasn't being planned. A lot of the story came from their success and then seeing how can they grow from this idea, so in the beginning this is kind of all that it was, but there are some things things that are worth mentioning because you can maybe see how they've grown. I feel like the important thing to remember is that the same person who's writing the songs now is the person that was writing the songs 10 years ago. So there are gonna be similar themes because he's still being real through his music. Like he's saying in this is an outlet, right? This is how you can express things when you're not feeling your greatest or when you want to connect with other people. So stuff like a car or a torch, these are symbols that show up throughout all of their music, and people can tie it back and be like, oh, they're so smart, they've been thinking about it for this long. But I think more than likely those are symbols that had already meant something to Tyler and Josh, and they're able to carry it through and build a story off of it now. But that doesn't mean that they were writing songs 10 years ago that relate in the same way. And then at the end of that album, Goner, he says, I've got two faces, Blurry's the one I'm not, I need your help to take him out. He recognizes that there is a distinction between him and this bad side of him that he's been fighting. The Blurryface tour ended on May 7th, 2016, but less than a month later, the boys were back on the road with the Emotional Roadshow tour. This tour was 123 shows and went until June 25th, 2017, which means almost 2 years of back-to-back touring, which is just so overwhelming. I cannot imagine. Especially with how quickly they grew during that time. Even those 2 years completely changed how people viewed them, I feel like. Also in the middle of this, on June 21st, 2016, they released Heathens for the Suicide Squad movie. I've seen some people saying that this video specifically is where the actual story begins, like the actual visuals for the story. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that it inspired everything that came next because it was something new. It was something different to think about and something different to work on. I guess one of the reasons that people think this is because in the Heathens music video, Tyler has a scar going across his nose, and that comes up in other videos. He still has a scar in his nose, but people are saying it's moving around or maybe it represents something else. There's lots of theories. It's not really consistent. It's just a thing that's there sometimes. And also the fact that in this video, Tyler is in a prison and the jumpsuit turns from orange to yellow, which becomes the color of the next album, but I feel like it's foreshadowing at best. I don't think this starts the story. But in the Heathens music video, Tyler is trapped in a prison. Josh is able to play his little drums and get him out of there, and they also release a bunch of other prisoners. They have a little bit of a concert, and then by the end of the video, it circles back around and they're trapped back in their cells. I think the visuals are cool, I think the foreshadowing is cool, but more importantly is the way Tyler viewed that song. I feel like that matters more than anything because in a Zane Lowe interview, which I will definitely link those, Tyler kind of breaks down each of the albums with him, and it's such in-depth interviews. I really appreciate the way that the interviewer went about it. I'm gonna try to link lots of things that I'm referencing, but I know specifically I would like to link those because they were really cool interviews and just a really good way to see insight into his thought process. But Tyler explained that he had been feeling uninspired after the constant work that was the Blurryface album and then the tour and just constantly being on the move, and then the Heathens song gave him something new to think about. It was an exercise to get back into writing, and it was an exercise to get back into writing, but he talks about how he wanted it to be a way to connect with his fans.
We kind of got shoved into the mainstream. And I felt like I always wanted to explain to the mainstream audience, like, about our fans and who we really are, and try to bring them along and kind of go, listen, this is what you should expect. You know, we're powerful, and these kids have something to say, and they're worth listening to. And so that song kind of became something that I wanted to write to explain our dynamic with our fans.
But I love that when he felt pressure and he felt overwhelmed from all the success that they were having, and he felt maybe a little bit of writer's block, he fell back on what he knew, which is his connection with the people that care and the people that understand and the people that are going through similar things. He fell back on being vulnerable and emotional and honest and bonding over mutual struggles. It's just so good because it shows what they want to be. In my head, this period of the band was like one of their peaks, and the fact that even during this time, he's still looking at mainstream popularity and he's saying, well, I'm gonna go focus on the people that really care about all of this and that really understand what's going on here. I think that's so special, and that's something that is still, it comes up so much. I know I'm kind of talking in circles, but it just makes me so happy to see somebody care so genuinely about the people that care about them. But this did also help him shake off a little bit of his writer's block post Blurryface, and that is what leads us into the next album and officially into the storyline. On February 3rd, we get a music video for Heavy Dirty Soul, one of the songs off of Blurryface. The video starts off with Tyler riding in a car, but it's unclear who's driving. The only time we see the front seat of this car, it's either the back of a hooded figure or there's nobody there at all. Tyler is being driven past Josh. He keeps almost hitting them, but they swerve at the last second, and his drum set slowly starts to catch on fire, and along with that, Tyler's car starts to fall apart. By halfway through the song, Tyler's car is missing all 4 doors and also the roof. So things are not looking so good for it. Right before the car explodes, Tyler jumps off, performs his little ending with Josh, and the car is flaming behind them. We don't know it yet, but this video is the start of everything. We're not quite there yet, but don't worry, we will be. On February 12th, 2017, the boys won a Grammy for Best Pop Duo for Stressed Out, and yes, this is the one that they took their pants off for. 3 days later is the release of the first Sleepers chapter, and these were a set of vlogs that showed the end of the Emotional Roadshow tour. They would have acoustic versions of some of the songs off of the album playing, and then under that would just be little cute clips of them practicing or hanging out or performing or whatever it is, just little moments from the end of the tour. There were 5 Sleepers chapters that wrapped up the end of the blurryface era and the Emotional Roadshow tour. On February 15th, we got We Don't Believe What's on TV, March 6th with Message Man, March 21st was Hometown, April 25th was Not Today, and July 5th was Goner. At the end of the 5th chapter, when the video is done, there is a less than second long clip of an eye closing. It is so quick, and it is so ominous because what does it mean? When I was doing research for this video and I had to go back and watch it, genuinely it hurt my chest to look back at that because I remember being a fan in that moment and watching it and seeing everything that came after, and it hurt so bad to have to revisit that. It was so dramatic. It was the most life-changing thing at the time. If you were not there, you simply cannot understand the impact that this and everything that follows had. No words can explain how emotionally devastating this all was, but in a very fun way, because it's like, what are they doing, you know? I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but if you know, you know, right? Sleepers episode 5 ends with a very fast visual of an eye closing, and this is the last thing that we see from the band for a while. The next day, July 6th, 2017, is the day 21 Pilots went silent. The eye closing brings us 1 year of silence. Fans called it a hiatus, although that was never an official name, but that is what it's called. And what happened during that time? Over the course of July 6th, the same eye that we see closing at the end of the Sleepers video can be seen on both their profile picture and their banners on social media. The profile picture was the same exact thing that we saw in the Sleepers video of a red eye with their symbol in it, and then the banner was a little bit different. It was still the same eye, but instead of giving us what the eye looks like, we're seeing what the eye is looking at. So through the vague shape of an eye, we are looking out at a crowd of fans. Throughout the day, people started to notice some changes because the eyes were closing. Again, the profile picture very much just mirrored what we already saw, but slower because it's still images as their profile picture, but the banner was interesting because there were some more details to it. There were some lyrics reflected, again, backwards because you're looking out, so you're behind the words, but it was lyrics from some songs. So as the day goes on, we got You'll Have to Come and Find Me from Polarize, My Pretty Sleeper from Oh Misbeliever, Wouldn't It Be Great If We Could Just Lay Down from Slowtown, I Will Fear the Night Again from Truce, Nobody Dreams When They Blink from Kitchen Sink, Remember the Morning Is When Night Is Dead from Message Man, and finally, Now I Just Sit in Silence from Car Radio. Silence. That was it. With one exception, we don't really see anything from the band for an entire year past this point. The one exception is an award show on July 17th, 2017, where Josh goes up to accept an award. He was going up to accept an award for most dedicated fans, but Tyler was not there, which is pretty unusual because normally Tyler is kind of the spokesperson of everything. When addressing this, Josh said,
Tyler wishes he could be here. He's actually off severing ties with dema. But I had to make sure that I was here to accept this award.
What could it mean, right? There's not really much of a reaction at that point because what is dema? Why is Tyler severing ties? It's kind of just a throwaway comment, but obviously it's something that hints at whatever's going on because that's really the only thing that we were getting. And I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but the band did later clarify on Reddit what dema is, just to give you a little glimpse into the direction that we're going with all of this. Dema was inspired by Dogma, or Towers of Silence from Zoroastrianism. These towers were used for a Zoroastrian tradition where you would put decomposing bodies into a tower and let vultures feed on the bodies. I guess not just vultures, but scavenger birds in general, but vultures are kind of the main thing, and they become a symbol of this album. The tradition started to die out because they just were running out of vultures. The vultures were dying out. And because of that, they couldn't carry out their religion, and Tyler explained that he thought it was intriguing, the idea of a dying religion, of something that they couldn't control. The declining vulture population meant that the tradition couldn't be carried out, and there's only so much that you can do to stop that. He explains that he was interested in how something so natural, like vultures going extinct, it completely gets in the way of their practice. Dema, Tower of Silence, vultures. Moving on. For a long time, there is nothing from their social media, from their music, there is not a word until April 21st, 2018. Fans noticed a hidden message on the Vessel merch website that presented a URL of dma.org.info. This led to an error page saying, "You are in violation, they mustn't know you were here. No one should ever find out about this. You can never tell anyone about this. For the sake of the other's survival, you must keep this silent. We must keep this silent. No one can know, no one can know, no one can know." There are capitalized letters throughout this message, and when you put them together, they spell out "East is up." Again, what does it mean? It's cryptic, it's weird, it's confusing, but it matters so much. Genuinely, I have chills just talking about it, just reading through this, because it's so good. I don't know how specific I can get here about what happened, because I feel like there's some things where it's just like, fans found this, and then used that to build on it and have more information, and I don't really know how clearly I can lay it out. The secret message within the Vessel page had a GIF, and when you layered the different frames of the GIF, you got a more complete URL. Part of the URL was just a bunch of dots, which fans recognized to be the Blurryface album, and when you assigned each... I got so overwhelmed trying to explain what I was saying, and it did not follow, so we're just gonna try again here really fast. So basically, something I had failed to mention before is the fact that each of the circles on the Blurryface album correlates with one of the songs. Each circle has a different design on it, and that goes along with the cover art for the different songs. Like if you go on YouTube, for example, the thumbnail and the visuals on each of the songs is what aligns the music with the circles. Fans saw these 8 dots, there's a space, and then there's one separated, and saw that to be the Blurryface album. So they looked at each of these dots and lined them up with what number on the track list the song was. So for example, Goner is 14, it's the last song on the album, so the number 14 comes after a space because the Goner dot is separated by a line. That's a complicated way of going about it, because if you just look at the violation code from the original error message, it's the same thing. Ultimately, it doesn't matter though. We need to get that number to get the bigger picture. The full URL, once you put everything together, is dma.org.info/found/1539864214/clancy.html. On this website, we get the start of Clancy's letters. Each of the letters has a title that at first seems like random numbers, but actually they're dates that are significant to the band. The first letter that is on this hidden website is titled 98806 Moon 18, and that date is Josh Dunn's birthday. I would like to make it known I do have all of the letters here, but I'm not going to show this just because that's impossible and also bright. But I do have them all, and it is very fun to hold and to look at them. I will put the actual letters on the screen so that you can hopefully see it a little bit better. The first letter just throws us straight into this world, and it starts by describing how the author is comfortable living in Dema until very recently. They didn't realize until their 9th year living there that something might be off, which 9 is a number that we see come up again and again. There's 9 dots on the Blurryface, there's 9 years, there's 9 years between Clancy, and it goes on. 9 is a very significant number, it seems. Also, this letter came out in 2008, which if you go back 9 years, that's when the band started. He talks about how he used to look at Dema with wonder, but now he realized that it was a trap all along. How he and the other people living in his region represent a certain bishop with honor. You learn that each bishop watches over a different region of the city, and the author describes that his bishop, Keon's, is unwavering and forthright. Those adjectives stand out with what we will learn about the bishops, because that is not how you would describe them. We will see later that the bishops are pretty sneaky. They're not very forthright. It's a weird thing that Keon's is described this way, because that is not how you will see the other bishops to be. And the bottom of this letter is signed off with the name Clancy, somebody we will become very familiar with. Also along the side of the letter, it says west wall is blocked, east is up, which we have seen that message before, east is up. That was in the first error message that we got. So just from this letter, we know that Dema, which Josh had referenced at the award show, is a city divided into regions that are controlled by bishops. I will say, just getting this and nothing else probably leads to more questions than answers. But I guess that's what we're here to clear up. Along with the letters, there are also different pictures and GIFs and other content that relates to the story. Document 98812 Moon 01, which is Tyler's birthday, is an image of what looks like the bottom of the FPE logo, which I didn't really talk about that, but it was on the screen earlier, FPE for the few, the proud, and the emotional. And on this image, there's text that says, identified as failed perimeter escape. Failed perimeter escape, FPE. The meaning has changed. The letters are the same, but it means something different here. Failed perimeter escape by dema council. Violation of section, and then the number that we already saw from the URL of the violist code of conduct. Again, more questions than answers. Who are the violists? 0912 Moon 29 is the self-titled album release date, and the image is looking up at vultures lining a wall similar to the Towers of Silence that we were talking about, how the vultures are looking down at their prey. 1107 Moon 08, which is the regional at best album release, is a cropped image of a mathematician that we're not going to talk about right now, but he will become significant later. 01301 Moon 08 is Vessel's album release, and it gives us a map of a circular city and a torn-off corner that we later will see reads Sacred Municipality of Dema United Violists. Sacred suggesting religion, right? Which goes along with the bishops. And also United Violists leads us to believe that the violists are the people following that religion. We don't know what they believe in, really. The map has 9 circles in the center of the city, which, again, looks pretty similar to the Blurryface album. Each of the circles has a name over it. We have Andre, Liston, Keons, Nico, Rizdro, Sakarver, Nils, and Vitomo. My apologies if I pronounced them wrong. And because we've already heard that Keons is one of the bishops, specifically Clancy's bishop, we can tell that these are the 9 bishops that rule each of the regions of Dema. I love how there's just a huge part of the map that I just didn't mention at all. Aside from the obvious things that we're looking at, like the bishops and the areas that they control, the map also has a city limit, and beyond that is the necropolis. The city really is not that big on the map, and there's a big surrounding area with a lot of little rectangles, but that's for the dead. I just completely did not mention that at all. That is significant, right? Because we can assume that means the entire area is filled with bodies. Just something to keep in mind. Might be important later. Also, if you take this map and rotate it so that east is up, which is the message that we've been getting, the names on the circles line up with the songs from the Blurryface album. Because like we already talked about, each of the circles on the Blurryface album correlates to one of the songs. Like how the bottom right corner is a black circle with birds, and that would represent Goner. When the Dema map is rotated so that east is up, each of the names lines up with lyrics from the songs that they go with. So you'd have Keon, Sakarver, and Listo on top. For example, Nils, who is now on the bottom right once you've rotated the map, would line up with Goner. His name can be found within the lyrics, beaten down, I'll slip away. It's not direct, it's not obvious, it's split up between multiple words, but down, I'll slip. Following this theme, Rizdro would line up with doubt of temperature is dropping. Lisden comes from polarize, all I feel is denial, and so on. Each of their names comes from the songs, except for Nico. That name cannot be found in the song Stressed Out. But I would argue that that name is maybe the most easy to find, because he says it. My name's Blurryface and I care what you think. Nico is Blurryface. Or maybe all of the bishops are Blurryface. The bishops are kind of an extension of the Blurryface character, where in the previous album it was just one character. In this new album, it's building into an entire world. Underneath this image was a caption saying severing ties, which is something that Josh said. Tyler is off severing ties with Dema. There's also the repeated phrase of get out, the compass lies, they don't control you, with capital letters throughout it that spell out east is up. We're really pushing that message. 01702 Moon 12 is the date that they won the Grammy, and at first this image doesn't seem like much. It's just a couple of yellow dashes across the page. It is gonna line up with something else in just a second. 01707 Moon 07 is the date of the start of the hiatus. And this starts off with another letter from Clancy. It's not as long as the last one, but still significant. The letter touches on how Dema has always been the place that Clancy has existed, but it's never really felt like home. He hopes for experiences and discoveries that can only exist outside of the wall. Along with this, it has several missing letters, which when you pull those out of the message, they spell out, you are still sleeping. When the eye closed with the start of the hiatus, almost all of the lyrics related to sleeping, going to sleep, the night. This message confirms that the period of sleep we saw almost a year ago is not over yet. You are still sleeping. 01707 Moon 16 is a gif of a cheetah with letters flashing over it way too fast to read comfortably, But when you take all those letters out, they spell out, "You still don't know his real name, do you?" with some letters in between that spell out Nico, which, as we saw from the map, Nico is one of the bishops. 01707 Moon 17 is the date that Josh accepted the award that dema was first mentioned, and it's an image of a group of people looking down over a cliff, with the caption, "Not my only friend." Is it suggesting that the people in the image are more friends? Is it saying that these people are not friends? Who's to say? The image also has the file name 2018-51438, which if you take those numbers, turn them into letters, you get trench. Also, I have no clue how people thought to do this. I would not have the brain power, but if you take those numbers and put them into the URL in the same place where the missing numbers were last time, you get an audio that when you pitch it up and reverse it, it says, "We are banditos." 01807 Moon 01. From this point, the title of the letters, those dates, all line up with what the letter is from. It's not referencing the past anymore, it's now following when the letters are being put out. We get a gif of a vulture and also another letter from Clancy. Also, this letter is where those yellow dashes from earlier come in. In the letter, Clancy questions how the bishops are so easily able to erase the dreams of the citizens of Dema. He explains that when vialism was instituted, it took away hope from a lot of people. He says the people used to be filled with hope that motivated existence, but now the people live in a trance of obedience. The only light he's seen is in the eyes of those being smeared. The bright eyes are strangled by the darkness of the bishop's hands. It's not really clear what being smeared means at this point, but I do think it's a funny term. And again, when you take those yellow dashes from earlier and overlap them with this picture, you get the words "We are banditos" highlighted. There were also yellow numbers that correlate with letters from this letter. If you take the letter that is next to each of the numbers and you unscramble it, again, it spells out trench. So some of the repeated phrases we have trench, we have east is up, and we have "We are banditos." 0180705 gives us an image of an empty landscape and also a letter from Clancy. I did invert this picture just so that I could see it better, and so that I would use less printer ink, I'll be honest. But this letter came out one day before the year anniversary of the eye closing, so it's pretty significant, right? We're coming up on a big anniversary here. The letter is anticipating a big event, saying that we're almost ready, and instead of hiding, they're gonna make an effort to be noticed. The use of the word "we are" is also interesting because Clancy is now a we. There's a group here. There's a group effort being made. The letter says that once a year there's an annual assemblage of glorified. This is some sort of yearly religious spectacle, but we don't really know much past that. Who are the glorified? Why are they gathering? We don't know much about that. I will say there are some people, when this was coming out, that got really deep into theories. It's the most out there thing that only so many people could possibly know about, unless you really went digging. He says that they're willing to risk getting smeared. This is the second mention of being smeared. We know it's not a good thing, and we know it's something that the bishops are doing to people. The end of the letter says, "By morning, everything will be different. I'm terrified and excited, all at the same time. They don't control us." We can assume this "they" refers to Dema, or the bishops. There are also dots along the outside of the letter, and if you take where they are on the page, and then you count that many lines down based on how many dots are in the line. If that makes sense, like the top 2 dots are only 1, so you go to the first line. The second set are 2 dots, so you go to the second line. And the bottom is 6 dots, so you count 6 dots up, and the letter that lines up with that is what the message is coming from. And guess what this spells out? It's not "east is up" this time. The message says "wake up." Before we got "you are still sleeping," now wake up. Something big is coming. And I did note this later when I was reading back through everything. This letter stands out to me as being a very weird one. We're going to talk a lot later about these letters and about Clancy, obviously, because that's where this is all going, but this letter specifically stood out to me as being a little bit odd. For one thing, this letter never clarifies if the writer, Clancy, is going in or out. It says that they're going to try to be noticed, but I don't really know what they're doing. With what we already know from Clancy, you can assume that they're trying to get out, because we know that they have lived in Dema for however long, and that they're craving the outside world, but this letter doesn't mention that. Also, the vague "they don't control us," where in the past they have clearly stated Keons, the bishops, Dema, whatever it is, so to say "they don't control us," it feels different. We'll talk about it later. It's just a thought. You can just let that simmer. The next day, 1 year since the hiatus began, we get an image with the title "They Can't See FCE 300, which is a code for the color yellow. If we're going off of the vague "they" meaning bishops, like we did for the last letter, we can assume this means that the bishops can't see that specific shade of yellow. We will see very soon that color of yellow defines this album. 0180708 is a letter from Clancy, but this time instead of being typed, it's handwritten. Clancy has officially escaped dema. In the past, he had been talking about how he was trapped, how he wanted to see what was beyond the walls. Now he's finally out. He doesn't have the same resources as he did when he was in the city, so he's handwriting on scraps of paper. He writes that for the first time he feels weightless, and like the air is worth breathing in, which is such a heartbreaking line to read. But also imagine how relieving that must be to be trapped in the city for so long and now you're finally seeing the world beyond it. He writes that he feels betrayed by what was once his home and he won't be able to look at it the same if he ever does go back. He writes, "These green cliffs engulf me and place me right in the middle. Trench is quite precarious at times, and it's easy to grow wary." Trench, again, we're seeing this come up again and again, the location of our new album. But it's real and it's true, and I'd much rather endure reality than to mindlessly be obedient to a life that someone else created for me. He's lost, he's in an unknown place, he really has never experienced something like this before, but he feels more at home than he ever has. He figures there have to be more people out in Trench besides just him, and he's excited to see what's out there. This is just a very hopeful message of somebody who's getting out of a really bad situation and they're experiencing freedom for the first time, and it feels really hopeful. The final paragraph of this letter says, "I am out here and I am very alive. I'm sometimes scared, but always discovering something new, and I will not stop. Cover me." We also get an image of a figure on the ground, which if you look at the shape of that paper with this letter, you can see that it's flipped. It's one side and the other. So again, using whatever resources you can, writing on one side of the picture. Around this time, fans also received an email of an eye beginning to open. And that brings us into Trench. On July 9th, the boys officially returned to social media with a video of a yellow eye opening, which, yes, this is the same image that fans had received in an email, but now everybody sees. Everybody knows. They're coming back. The next day, July 10th, the eye is open just a little bit more. It's mirroring what we saw a year ago, where the eye was slowly closing. Now, every single day, it's opening a little bit more until July 11th. On the 10th, there was audio playing over the eye, which was a muffled version of what we would soon see is the song Jumpsuit, because on July 11th, that song came out. 21 Pilots posted the music video for the song Jumpsuit, officially kicking off the Trench era. I feel like normally it would make more sense to talk about the lyrics and then analyze the videos as they came out, but since we got the videos first, I'm going to talk about visually what the story was, and then we'll break down the lyrics when it's all in this bigger context of the album. The music video for Jumpsuit starts off with Tyler standing on top of the car that was used in Heavy Dirty Soul, the car that ended up burning and exploding. It immediately ties the storyline of Blurryface and of that song, or that music video at least, to what's about to come. The video opens, he's standing on the car, and he says,
"We've been here the whole time. You were asleep. Time to wake up."
"We've been here the whole time. You were asleep. Time to wake up." Immediately, we leave this familiar scene and we fly over a valley, or maybe, I don't know, trench. We see Tyler flat on the ground, which is the image that we had gotten from Clancy's letters 01807 Moon 08. The inverted picture of a figure on the ground was Tyler. As Tyler stands up, you see a glimpse of the nothingness that surrounds him, but also you zoom over to a hooded man riding a white horse. As Tyler is walking through Trench, he looks up and sees the thing that we saw from image 01707 Moon 17, the group of people standing up on the cliff with the caption, "Not my only friend." Everything that we saw before is now being put into the actual official work of the band, rather than just being cryptic messaging from some obscure website. We watch as the hooded figure on the horse races up to Tyler before finally catching up to him. Everybody from up on the cliff is watching, Tyler is watching, it's about to go down. As the person on the horse gets up to Tyler, he seems to close his eyes and kind of accept his fate, like he knows that whatever this thing is that's coming for him, there's no fighting it. And the man that's been chasing him walks up and rubs black around his neck, the black that we've seen throughout all of the Blurryface album where he has it on his neck and his hands. It's the same type of thing now, except now this random figure is doing it to him. Tyler follows the man on the horse through the bridge of the song before flower petals start to rain down from the people up on the cliff. They're throwing down their support. And with this potential sign of support, Tyler takes his chance to try and run away one last time. The video ends with Tyler back on the ground, but this time with a flower to his chest. And the final scene of the video is the hooded man staring up at Josh. The video ends by circling back around to the end of Heavy Dirty Soul, where we see Tyler going into the back of the burned trunk of the car, grabbing out the outfit that he wears in the jumpsuit video, and then walking off into the distance. It fully ties the storyline together. You can see that whatever had happened, he had this outfit planned and ready, and he had a destination in mind, at least a little bit. Or at least he was confidently walking away from something. The cycle continues. So much of what they do is based around cycles and just being trapped in the same thing, or always returning to what's familiar or what's comfortable, or most of what they do is talking about fighting these cycles. Pretty soon after the jumpsuit music video was released, we also get a letter from Clancy that describes the events we had just seen in the music video. We see Clancy narrating what happened to Tyler. The letter is titled 01807 Moon 18, and it's under the file name Unalone. Clancy felt like he was being watched while he was out in trench, or he felt like there had to be other people out there. He can't be the only one, and now he's seeing somebody else for the first time, maybe. It's still handwritten, so you can tell that wherever Clancy is, he's still free from dema. He's still off on his own. It describes how he thought he was a single lone person in this unknown world, and he looked down off of the cliff and saw a figure. He describes how Tyler, as he's walking through trench, acts like it's familiar. He's not afraid like Clancy is. He acts like he's been here before. He says that when Tyler was looking up at the cliff where the banditos, we get their name now, were looking down at them, he couldn't tell if Tyler was frightened or encouraged. He watched as Nico, the bishop, came up on Tyler, and he was surprised by the different vibe that this guy gave off, because Keon's, like we talked about earlier, is honest and kind, and Clancy liked Keon's, but the same cannot be said for Nico. Nico feels threatening. He's not gentle or warm, and Clancy writes about how he watched Nico smear Tyler's neck, so now we get a visual to go along with what that term means, where the light goes out of people's eyes. And this is the same marking that Tyler had had for the entire last album. Clancy's frightened by everything that's going on down there, so he runs away, and he considers returning to dema because at least it's somewhere familiar. It's somewhere where he knows what's going on, even if obviously he knows it's a trap and he knows there's so much more out there, but it's scary. He writes that even after seeing the banditos, he feels more alone than ever. July 26th gives us a music video for the song Nico and the Niners, and August 8th brings us the Levitate music video, which together, these three music videos complete the trio of the visuals for this storyline. These are the three music videos that really tell us the story for this album, and it's out before the album even is. So let's start with the video for Nico and the Niners. Similar to the jumpsuit video, we start by flying over a big empty landscape, but this time we see a big structure in the distance, and as we get closer, we can see that this is the city of Dema with the big 9 pillars in the center that represent each of the bishops. We're going through it, we're going into it, where we find Tyler. It starts off with Tyler taking flowers and putting them into a box that already has flowers in it, and you can assume that this represents all of the previous attempts that he has made to escape dema. In the same way that Clancy was talking about wanting to escape dema, Tyler has been trying. We cut to a scene of the 9 bishops in front of a crowd of very sad, very gray looking people. They do not look happy to be there. Meanwhile, Tyler is packing a bag and getting ready to maybe go on the run again. We also get to see more of the banditos, the people that were up on the cliff throwing the flowers down. You don't really know what they're doing yet, but they're moving through the dark with torches. They're going on a mission. We also see the bishops doing something with glass. We don't know. They're crafting. The banditos make their way into dema and surround Tyler as he's making his escape. They do the stressed out handshake, Tyler and Josh. And then Tyler is standing in front of the group of banditos as he sings, "We'll win, but not everyone will get out," which sounds kind of like a call to action. He's talking directly to the banditos here. They have to fight dema, they have to find a way to escape, but not everybody's gonna make it. But also, just from this alone, it kind of looks like he is now going to lead them. He's telling them how it's gonna be. It just feels very powerful. The bishops notice a disturbance within the city because Josh is drumming so hard that they can see the water moving, but by the time they go to check it out, the banditos have already escaped. The video ends with 2 kids coming across Josh's drums and a bandito jacket as the bishops walk up. It leaves you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. What's gonna happen to these kids? Who knows? I wonder if we'll see more from them later. The Levitate video doesn't really give us much, I'll be honest. It's kind of just them performing in a cool location. It starts off with Tyler and Josh and the rest of the Banditos walking down a cliff. They're all just following each other. They've got their torches. They get to a camp, shave Tyler's head. There are cool visuals of vultures. It looks like the Banditos did successfully help get Tyler out of Dema, and now he's able to lead them, but by the end of the video, Bishop hands come up from behind Tyler and pull him back. He can never seem to escape. They always get him in the end. He stares blankly off into the distance as they drag him away. He's not fighting, he's not resisting, he's just given into this. And that's really all I have to say for that video. On September 12th, 2018, the band does their first live performance of some of the songs from Trench, and the show was called A Complete Diversion. A little bit of a callback to one of the lyrics from the song Nico and the Niners, which says, "Start a concert, a complete diversion." It is literally what they are doing. Some people also noted how that line seems to maybe reflect what happens in the Heathens music video of creating a diversion with Josh playing the drums and then getting everybody out, but we're not gonna build the lore from the Heathens video. I just can't put myself through that. But it also does seem to line up with that suspicious letter that we got earlier, 01807 Moon 05, that detailed a plan to divert attention away from the annual assemblage in order to step through. But again, that letter was vague and unclear, and we don't really know what the plan was or who the group was. But there are things that are happening, and they're kind of combining the real world with the story. On October 5th, 2018, Trench was released, along with a music video for one of the songs on it, My Blood, but there's not really much to say for that. I feel like it was maybe their most normal music video that I've ever seen, and I didn't even watch it until after I had finished everything for this video because I didn't even know that it was there. Like, I have not seen anything about it, but it just seems like a completely normal video, and maybe that's just because they're not the main characters, or they're not the only characters for once. And I guess you could tie it into the lore, but it's not really like a big thing. It's just a cool video, honestly. We're just gonna move past that though. We're just gonna talk about Trench, because this is it. We had blurryface, we set up that initial character, now we get the world. I'm gonna be referencing more from the interview with Zane Lowe because I just love that interview, but when Tyler was asked about the process of going from the character of blurryface to creating this entire world, he explained that he started working on it right around the time that the eye closed, and the world that he started to build completely consumed him, which I related to, because once I started getting into this world and researching everything, I also could not do anything else. I was so fully immersed in understanding everything, and I can only imagine how much greater that feeling would be if you're the one creating it. He wanted to build on who blurryface has become, and he explained that the album is shaped a lot by fan interactions because he watches what happens online. He watches all the theories, and he can incorporate that into what his ideas are. The fans build the world, and then Tyler gives it back to us. It's all a big mutual creative process, and I think that's so great. Blurryface started off as just a character to represent insecurity, but now it transitioned to something that has jurisdiction over certain mental/physical places, in this case the bishop's controlling Dema, and he explains that for his mental process he can try to stay away from those places where the bad feelings have jurisdiction. By staying away from those places, you're giving that feeling less control. So, like, trying to escape Dema, trying to escape the bishops, it's scary and it's wild, but it's also creative and free, and those are the things that you have to work for even if it's hard. I remember when this album came out, fans were a little bit skeptical of the whole aesthetic because it's so different from what was, but it's grown on people over time, and also after a whole year of nothing, we were kind of just desperate. The whole album is really good at continuing their style while also blending new techniques and building the world and still being enjoyable for casual listeners. It just works well for a lot of different people and for a lot of different reasons. It was just such a relief to feel their presence again. Let's get into the lyrics. The album starts off with the songs Jumpsuit and Levitate, both of which we've already heard from the music videos. Jumpsuit starts with the phrase, "cover me," which is something we had seen from Clancy's letters. I will say there are lots of lyrics that reference Clancy letters, or maybe Clancy letters that reference lyrics. Either way, I'm probably not going to catch them all, but I did try to make note of what I could because I think that's such a cool detail to add. If there are any that I forget to mention, please let me know because they make me so happy to see. In the bridge of Jumpsuit, Tyler sings that he'll be right there, but you'll have to grab his throat and lift him in the air and also break both his hands, which, as we've seen with the black paint and the spearing and everything, his throat and his hands, these are the two things that he uses to be creative. His singing and also his writing or playing instruments or whatever, this is how he expresses himself. The lyrics to Levitate have a fun little reference to car radio, saying, I got back what I once bought back in that slot I won't need to replace. To counter car radios, I have those thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought. The song also references vultures, which is a visual that we see throughout this album, and also most notably on the cover. On the actual album cover is a giant picture of a vulture. And the song ends with Welcome to Trench, which is obviously a huge phrase, right? It's inviting us into this entire world. The third track is called Morph, and it talks about turning into somebody else, but also the bigger question of what happens when you die. And this song gives us a lot. This song hands us so much information about the world. So the main message of the song is, I'll morph to someone else, I'm just a ghost, defense mechanism mode, but then it goes into some name dropping and some storytelling. He says that Nicholas Bourbaki, aka Nico, aka the bishop that was chasing him down, tries to stop him, which we have obviously seen already from the jumpsuit video. But who is Nicholas Bourbaki? Kind of a weird name to just throw out there, and it was a real name. It does come from something. He didn't just make that up. Nicholas Bourbaki is a real name from the 1930s, but it is not the name of one person. It's a group of 9-ish people, 7 to 9 people. They were mathematicians. You might remember there was a mathematician mentioned earlier. The cropped picture from one of the earlier Clancy letters is a cropped image of one of the mathematicians that was a part of the Nicholas Bourbaki group. It all ties together. That was just a little teeny tiny reference to something much bigger. This group is known for a lot of things, one of them being the empty set O, which is the thing that the band was kind of known for the Blurryface album. That was how they marked a lot of their stuff. The O with the dash across it that you see in their album cover, and also the way that most of us typed in 2015, let's be real. But the Bourbaki group took that symbol from the Norwegian alphabet and used it to denote the empty set. Also, big words here, the group had an axiomatic view of topology, properties that are preserved over various deformations. What the object was is what the object will be, regardless of how it is changed. I'll morph to someone else, but you're still Tyler. The whole idea kind of mocks what Tyler is singing about. He's singing about how he'll morph into somebody else. He'll just become a different person. But this theory and Nicholas Bourbaki, the whole thing ties into the idea that what you were is what you will be. It was also around this time that people started to theorize that Tyler is Clancy. He's morphing into somebody else, and maybe that somebody else is Clancy. A whole new identity. But going back to the album as a whole, where Blurryface was a lot more on personal insecurity and internal struggles, I feel like this album is a lot more about collaboration and mutual support. Lines like, you don't need to run, stay with me, my blood. Nice to know my kind will be on my side. Lean on my pride, I'm a lion. All of these lines are talking about going to other people for support and lifting each other up and working together. And obviously the Banditos, what we've been seeing from the videos, it's all group work. Chlorine tells this pretty literal story within I plan my escape from walls they can find. Obviously Tyler is planning to escape Dema through the literal walls. And that song also has the line Rebel Red Carnation, maybe Rebel Red like the Blurryface era. We will see the new album that's coming out also features red, so maybe that color in general to represent the rebellion. And the outro of this song is very special. It says, I'm so sorry I forgot you, let me catch you up to speed. It feels like it's a direct call out to the listeners saying, hey, I'm sorry that this story has been going on and you haven't been a part of it, let me tell it to you. He's specifically saying sorry to the fans that have felt abandoned for the past year. He's finally laying it all out for us, letting us see where he's been. I will say Smithereens isn't necessarily worth talking about. We won't mention it again because it is just Bruno Mars's Grenade, but for Tyler, it is his obligatory love song. Moving on. Beyond Gravestones, on the other hand, I would argue is maybe the most important song of this album. I love this song. I think it's a little bit cheesy. I didn't like it at first, and I still sometimes I think it's a little bit cringe to listen to, but once you understand how real of a message it is, I guess, like how much they believe in that message, it's so special. Even if it is a little straightforward, I do think we need this type of messaging that is so straightforward about this topic, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The song Neon Gravestones is also very important for explaining what actually goes on in Dema. The song calls out the glorification of suicide in just our society in general, but also in this world. This band talks about mental health struggles and insecurity, and they talk about fighting suicidal urges or whatever. Like, that's always been a big theme of their music. Stay alive. That's what they always say. He says that he could go out with a bang, but they'll say, how could he go if he's got everything? They'll mourn for a kid, but won't cry for a king. Society loves to talk about tragedies after they've happened, but they're also really quick to blame those who have taken action if they deem the circumstances inadequate. If you're somebody who has a lot of power, or who's older, or is just in a better place, or at least from what other people can see, they'll say, how could you do that? How could you take it all for granted? How could you let this all go? We react when life is cut short. We say that it's such a tragedy, or we judge the person for doing what they did, rather than celebrating lives well lived, highlighting those who have had long lives and showing the joy that can come from that. Instead, we talk about death so much. If somebody takes their own life, that becomes the focus of them, rather than the life that they did live. So we get to a point in society, and as we will see in Dema, where you almost want to do that in order to get the attention, because it feels like that's the thing, right? The whole glorification of suicide. That's what this song is about. A lot of critics, when they listened to this album, found this track to be disturbing, and they said maybe this shouldn't be on here because maybe this song itself glorifies suicide. But I don't think so at all. I think this is maybe the most important song because it is such a direct call out to the very real issue. This is exactly what the band has been creating content about since the beginning. But also from the title, Neon Gravestones, where have we seen neon lights before? Maybe when the bishops were doing their little crafting earlier? And guess where those neon gravestones go? Oh, outside the entire perimeter of the city. We're slowly making our way to the bigger explanation of what all is going on here. Tyler explained that the song The Hype is meant to be for a younger version of himself, more conversation of struggling with both internal and external pressure to fit certain ideas of what he should be doing, but ultimately it's just encouragement to keep going. Nico and the Niners we already saw from the music video, but this does directly tell us more story because obviously Nico and the Niners. The song starts off with some reversed audio that says, "We denounce vilism, you will leave Dema and head true east. We are banditos." It also starts with the phrase "east is up," so these are all things we've seen before. More talk about being a rebel. He says that Dema doesn't control them, which is something we saw in 018, 07, Moon 05. They don't control us. Now it's Dema don't control us. Bandito is a song from the rebel group, showing how the banditos support each other with lines like, "Either way, it helps to hear these words bounce off of you. The softest echo could be enough for me to make it through." Sounds kind of weird, out of context, but it's a song where the banditos are saying they will support each other, they will get through this together. This song also has the repeated phrase "Salo Folina," which I haven't seen an explanation on what this actually means. I don't know if there is an official one, or if there's one that can be figured out, or if it's one of those things that just has a meaning to the band that is separate from anything we will ever understand. Some people have theorized that it translates to enable creative creations, others notice an anagram of all Ohio fans. There are lots of different theories that float around. Tyler explained that "Salo Felina" is what we cry out in trench when we are in need. It's a phrase used by banditos to support each other or to call out for help. Regardless of if there is some greater meaning, that's what it means in this story. Another really, really important line from the song Bandito is, "I created this world to feel some control. Destroy it if I want." At the end of the day, no matter how invested we are in the songs, in the story, in anything that comes next, you have to remember that it's all just some idea from some guy. And yes, he did build it off of our ideas, and yes, he did make it for us, but it's also his world. It's also not a real world, you have to remember that. So at any point, he can change any details. He can make the story go however he wants it to. There's the line, "I could take the high road, but I know that I'm going low," which I like it for 3 different reasons. The first is it works for lore, because the phrase typically means choosing revenge over the righteous option, going low, like going for it, which could describe how the banditos are going to go against Dema by any means necessary. 2, it could literally be talking about how the banditos are going low, they're escaping Dema by maybe going under the walls. But 3, it talks about how the band is staying low rather than going up into mainstream media. They're staying low and doing what they do. I also wrote, fun fact about this song is that Tyler had been working on it in the early Blurryface tour, so even if the world wasn't fully formed at that time, which I have already been talking about, how I don't think stuff was planned that far back, the ideas were starting. Pet Cheetah is just a really cool song. There's not much to say about it. We did obviously get that cheetah gif earlier, but it's not really significant. It's just a really cool song. I love the idea that you can challenge writer's block and still be able to put out something that is so cool. And that brings us to the last 2 songs of the album. We have Legend, which is a song for Tyler's grandfather who had passed. And that song just feels like a genuine expression of emotion. It doesn't seem like there's much to take from that. It was just him talking to somebody he cared about. And then the album ends with the song Leave the City. Obviously, that's gonna be story-based, leaving Dema the city. Tyler sings that the burning is so low it's concerning, and when it goes out, it's a glorious gone. Where have we seen the word glorious before? From the letters, we've seen the annual assemblage of glorified, and the glorious gone. And that also reminded me of 018, 07, Moon 01, where CLANCY mentioned how the light in people's eyes was strangled by the darkness of Bishop's hands. The low light is concerning, and when it goes out, it's a glorious gone. The bishops take the light from people's eyes. Do you see where we're going with this? The bishops put out the light in people's eyes, and when the light goes out, the glorified is gone. Are the glorified in the assemblage already dead, or are they dying? Also, from neon gravestones, we glorify those even more. So if all of this is talking about glorifying suicide, and there are the glorified, what is this assemblage for, exactly? He sings he will leave the city, but for now he'll stay alive. The song ends with him saying that he needed a change of pace because he couldn't keep up, which could be talking about how the speed of Blurryface was just a little bit too much and they needed a break. While he's far from home, he's not alone in trench, and the final line says, "These faces facing me, they know what I mean." Similar theme to what we saw from the other songs of "Only Few Will Understand." He's saying there's certain people out here that just get it. And Tyler has explained that this song is talking about any point where somebody finds himself in between two places. You don't know what to expect, but you have to start this journey. You have to go somewhere. There's not a clear destination. There's not a clear answer for what you should be doing, but you have to start moving. On October 16th, 2018, the first of 115 shows for the Bandito tour started. And I will say, with all of this new music to unpack, we kind of got a whole album dropped on us. There wasn't much lore for a little while here. In December, the band put out an interactive Spotify Bandito experience where you could go through dema, but there wasn't really much to find about that. It's kind of just a cool thing for those who are able to experience it. January 22nd, 2019 gives us the release of the Chlorine music video and also our first introduction to Ned. The Chlorine video seems to exist outside of at least the physical world of Trench and Dema, but the ideas and the characters do still eventually tie in. The video starts off with the perspective of something peering around the corner looking at Tyler and Josh, and then we get our first look at Ned. We watch Tyler and Josh slowly filling up a pool, but Ned is not satisfied, and judging by the song's title, they're filling it with chlorine. Ned just wants a pool full of chlorine and they're not giving him enough. Eventually, Ned is satisfied with their efforts and he jumps into the pool. Throughout the video, Tyler is also seen holding a cup of something, but he never drinks it. At the end of the video, he offers that cup to Ned, but Ned also doesn't seem satisfied with it. I'll be honest, I don't know that much about Ned. He does have his own merch shop, which is just full. There's so much. Why is there so much for just him? The shop is called Ned's Bayou, and from that merch, you can see that Ned stands for Neuro Expansion Device, which may be a good thing, or maybe not. He's really cute, so I do want to believe that he's a friend, but I don't know what he's doing. The band has talked about how Ned represents creativity and trying to appease it, how Ned had saved them and shaped the record because they worked to create what felt good with their creative judgment, which is what Ned would approve of. The same day that the Chlorine video is released, we also get a letter from Clancy titled 01901 Moon 22. It's typed, which is different. It immediately lets us know that Clancy is back in Dema. He had been considering it earlier, saying that it was something familiar, and maybe he followed through with that. I wrote here just as my own little side note, I keep thinking about how Dema and Blurryface represent insecurity and mental illness, and it makes me so sad to see how Clancy chooses, or Tyler is forced back, or whatever it is, they end up back at what is comfortable and familiar, even though it's draining and it's kind of unlivable. In this letter, there is a hidden message from specific letters that are doubled up. When you take those all out, it spells So Deep Ned Bayou, which Ned's Bayou is Ned. We saw that from the merch. In this letter, Clancy writes about his confusion. He doesn't know what home is anymore. Was it a good idea to return to Dema? Should he have stayed out and fought it out in the unknown? Did he give up by coming home? He was afraid of the bishop in Trench, but he tried to interpret the situation in different ways, where maybe Nico, this bishop that he was watching, maybe the bishop wasn't evil, it wasn't menacing, it wasn't threatening. Maybe this bishop was doing the right thing by trying to keep Tyler safe, by trying to take him home, trying to justify it, to allow yourself to feel okay about the place that you're in. It's really sad to read, because he was so happy when he was finally free. He writes that he's consumed with the unknown, but he found a home within the confines of Dema, and the letter ends with Clancy saying, "There is still so much I do not understand." And it pains me to say that this is the last time we will hear from Clancy for a while. July 26th, we get a music video for The Hype. The whole video feels homey and cozy. Again, it kind of feels like a normal video where they're just guys hanging out rather than characters in this bigger story, and yeah, that's it. December 13th, 2019 is the end of the Bandito tour, but it is definitely not the end of cryptic content. After a quick break for the holidays, we get a new song and video on April 9th titled Level of Concern. And this song isn't really in a specific album, so we'll just talk about it individually. The video was posted April 2020, so right when things started heating up in the world, when things were looking a little bit scary and people were a little bit lonely. It's pretty simple. It's just Tyler performing back and forth with Josh. They're both isolated, and then by the end of the video you see that they're living right next to each other, but they're just having fun. But it was playing on the whole thing that was going on at the time in the world where everybody was feeling a certain way. On the surface, this video seems like a personal, intimate little glimpse into their friendship and their home lives. You just get to see a little bit more of them as people. And I feel like the song and the video capture that time in a way that's really comforting to look back on, even though in the moment, obviously it was really scary. But it does also show how there were little things to appreciate, like Tyler had talked about how during that time he's appreciative now, because that was time that he was able to spend with his kid, that otherwise maybe he would have been touring, he would have been away. It's just really sweet to look back on. 2 months later, the band releases an ARG, an alternate reality game surrounding the song Level of Concern. It is so intricate, it is so well planned out. On June 12th, 2020, the band posted a live stream on their YouTube page with a hidden phone number and secret codes, and I cannot even begin to explain the depth that this went into. It went so far. There were so many things to look out for. There were 20 codes that people found in real life flash drives that got mailed to people. I'm not even gonna get into all of that because, to be honest, it's not even that relevant to the lore. It was just a thing that they did. I definitely recommend looking up full explanations, or at least looking at the explanation video that they have up on their channel, because they did go over everything that had happened for people that weren't invested in the moment. There are some little Easter eggs that tie into stuff that we're going to be talking about, but for the most part, it was just a cool thing that was happening at the time. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to hope that you look into it in your own time, and we're going to move forward. On June 21st, the channel started a never-ending live stream for that video where fans could post their own videos, and it would all go into this big thing, and that lasted for 178 days. Again, this was a lot more about building fan connections and just creating a fun little thing for everybody to do when things were so difficult. And then on June 24th, the band posted a summary of how fans solved the codes. They posted the explanation of what had happened. On December 8th, 2020, they released a song titled Christmas Saves the Year, which at first it seems like a friendly little holiday song, nothing to see here, but upon further inspection, fans started to notice something off about specifically the single cover. The music video came out a year later and has a lot of little Easter eggs in it. We're not even going to talk about that because that's, again, kind of just another fun thing, but the single cover for Christmas Saves the Year. I have no clue how people found such detailed images of this because I cannot see it for the life of me, but on the present in the background is the name Clancy. The present in the background is addressed to Clancy. And also on the wrapping paper is the words SAI is propaganda, although at the time we didn't know what SAI was. Which, considering we didn't know that, I have no clue how people were able to read that and understand it as letters, because I cannot see it. What technology are people using where they have such a clear image of this? I don't know. This didn't really mean anything to us at the time. It was kind of just a confusing hidden message, but it would soon come to shape the way that we saw the next 2 years. On April 2nd, 2021, the website where we were getting Clancy letters switched to a message saying terminating files before turning black 3 days later. Over those 3 days, there was a loading bar on the page, but also all of the letters were inverted, with the exception of the 3 that were already inverted. So we have the weird letter that I didn't get good vibes from. We have the dema map, and then we have the image of Tyler in the jumpsuit video. One thing to note is that the map of Dema originally had a warm tint to it, but when they inverted it, it became just solid black and white. There was no blue tint to it. Tiny little detail, don't know if it means anything, but it's not what it should have been. Also, the image of those dashes that layered over the other letter later, they were not inverted to the color that they should have been. With the bright yellow color that we had, it should have turned to a deep blue, but instead it turned to kind of a more cyan color, which means it was inverted from red. Tiny little details, just little things that were off about the inversions. After those 3 days, the loading bar reached the end and the page switched to say account terminated. It explained that the content we had been seeing was deemed contraband by the sacred municipality of Dema, which is the same authority that we saw from the map. This message comes with an infraction number, which, when you translate it to letters, spells out Clancy is dead. And if you just happen to scroll your mouse over one of the letters of the account terminated message, you would get to one of 3 posters being presented. These posters promoted an upcoming live stream from the band on May 21st. There are lots of little details to make note of about these posters, such as the production of DMA.org. FPE now stands for Future Performance Event, and there is still more messaging saying Clancy is dead. The posters look like old advertisements, maybe from the 80s. They're bright, and they're exciting, and they're appealing to what we would typically see, but it almost feels like the band is being sold as the products. We're not being sold the album, we're being sold them. That same day, the official blurryface Twitter announced that the new record is called Scaled and Icy. Scaled and Icy, we have temporarily left the realm of Trench. April 7th brings us both the official album announcement and also a music video for the song Shy Away. The album cover has an image of a dragon, and the following day Tyler announced that the dragon's name is Trash. There are some hidden things within Trash the Dragon that some people noticed, like the word destroy is hidden in his scales, and also some people noticed, I don't know how, some people noticed that there's a street in his scales that is the same place that Tyler grew up on, or the same place where the Goner music video is. And also that little street is called Clancy Way, which I don't think we're meant to get anything from that. I think it's a fun little Easter egg for people who noticed, but I am scared of whoever did notice that. And then April 30th, we get a music video for the song Choker. There's not much that we get from the Shy Away music video. It's mostly just Tyler and Josh performing. There are neon lights, they're in front of a gas station, but nothing really happens. There's one location where there's a dragon in the background. The scene changes a couple times, but overall it's a fairly scaled back music video, no pun intended, and we're just gonna keep moving. The Choker music video has a lot of little Easter eggs, but it's not set in the world that we've been seeing, so it's not directly tied to anything. Again, there are lots of theories as to how what's in that music video could represent certain things within this bigger Trench storyline, but it's just a fun music video. Tyler walks into a shop, Josh is behind the counter, Josh zaps his dog and turns it into a little minifigure, and then Tyler tries to steal a figurine of a dragon, and as he's running, Josh hunts him down and then zaps him and turns him into a figure as well. I know there are theories about what this could say about Josh as a character in the story, or I don't even know. If you are interested in all the possible meanings and hidden little Easter eggs within their music videos, I definitely suggest that you go look into full deep dive videos, because there are people putting out videos for every single thing that they've ever put out, breaking down every single music video and every single lyric, and I'm sure there are people that are gonna do it way better than I could. Everything from Trench felt so serious. We're fighting this big government and the whole city is terrible and all of these bad feelings, and then this just felt lighter. And that's something that we're gonna see from the rest of the album, because on May 21st, we get the release of the Scaled and Icy album and also the live stream experience. Because if you remember when the letters page turned to say account terminated, there were hidden posters for a live stream experience that was gonna be on May 21st, which is also the release date for the album. And I will say we have a lot to go through here just with the Scaled and Icy album. People had very mixed reactions when they first heard it because it's so different. Like I was saying, everything feels lighter. Yes, there are still some darker lyrics, but Trench and Blurryface just, they hit different, you know? This one was not doing the same thing. This album felt lighter, but it also felt commercialized. It felt like it was doing the whole thing that they had been talking against this whole time of going mainstream. It just didn't sound like them. In a new interview with Zane Lowe where he was talking about Scaled and Icy, he talks about how Trench was about pushing boundaries and playing around and seeing how abstract they could get with the sounds, but this album is very much focused on staying within the parameters of what is expected and seeing what you can put out that still fits within that box. Trench felt very personal, it felt very intimate, but this album feels manufactured. It feels like we're being sold something, which is something that I had said earlier about the posters. It feels like the band is what's being promoted rather than the music. And it's at this point that I would like to remind you about that little message on the Christmas single. SAI is propaganda. Scaled and Icy. Everything about the album is bright and upbeat, the saturation is all the way up, and the whole personal touch that we felt from their earlier music just wasn't really there. Critics still liked it because it's a good album, objectively, they just put out good music, but it wasn't the same, and if you knew what they were like, then you know that this isn't that. Fans also noticed that the album title, Scaled and Icy, is an anagram of the phrase Clancy is dead, which is something that had been repeated from the account terminated page in the posters, and we are getting thrown this message so much. It's the same thing as how earlier we were getting East is up and we're getting all of these phrases from Clancy. Now somebody is telling us Clancy is dead. I didn't really focus on it here, but that message Clancy is dead was also in the hidden level of concern puzzle. That was also one of the messages there. The usual 3-line logo that we had seen from their past couple of albums is gone, replaced with something that looks kind of like a trident, and I assumed that's all it was. I was like, this is a weird ocean theme that we're going for, but after looking into it a little bit, that shape is actually a weapon which is called the Sigh. And also, the dragon on the album cover, Trash the Dragon, looks very similar to Walter Crane's Dragon of Deception, and that artist was a propaganda artist. All these little details are tying together to tell us a much bigger story before we've even touched on the music itself. And we could go back even farther to the song We Don't Believe What's on TV, because most of the promotional material that we've gotten for this album has been seen on TVs. The live stream experience was for a TV show. It all comes together. Little details that are all tying together. It's just really fun to see how these themes are still carrying through, even if it's not explicitly stated. As for the live stream, it's such a good performance. It's such a cool way to play with the new and old songs because they performed both stuff from this album and also stuff from previous albums, and it really captures the energy that they have when they're doing live performances, even if you can tell something's off. Because as we'll talk about later, this live stream is not what they would normally do. Based in reality, people are finding new ways to be creative, and the live stream is a really cool way to do that. Specifically, I love when he's singing about his creativity, when he's singing Lane Boy and the crunch on Scaled Back and Isolated. I know saying that here probably doesn't mean anything, but if you have seen it, then maybe you know what I'm talking about. I just really liked those moments, just from a performance perspective. I just thought they sounded really good. But then also looking back at it, at how specifically those lines tie into everything that's happening, it all seemed to work out. In the live stream, there are two hosts, and throughout the entire live stream, you can see them slowly decomposing. They just look less put together, their sentences start to make a little bit less sense, and their eyes are also yellow and red, and they look unwell. And there are times where Tyler will start to sing some of their old stuff, and then he gets cut off, and then he's forced to sing stuff from Scaled and Icy. It just doesn't look like there are very many willing participants in this live stream. It feels very forced, again, very commercialized, manufactured. It doesn't feel genuine, really, from anybody, even from the people that are hosting it. They don't feel like they want to be there at all. Without explaining the entire thing, that's the idea. Tyler is performing for these guys. He doesn't really seem like he wants to do it. They don't really seem like they want to be there. I'm sure you can find it somewhere online if you want to see the whole thing. It's just also good performances of their songs. But Scaled and Icy is out, so let's talk about some of the lyrics. The first song on the album is titled Good Day, and Tyler explained that he wrote this song knowing it was gonna be the opening number, and he said he wanted it to feel like you're in a big warehouse and the lights are turning on. But also the lyrics are really dark. The song sounds happy, it sounds upbeat, but the lyrics are really dark, and he said that he had written it about what if he woke up one day and his family was gone. This imagined scenario where he wakes up and he lost his entire family, and this feeling of being so deep in denial that you're just pretending it's the greatest day ever. Overly leaning into these other feelings in order to cope with whatever terrible thing is going on, because that's probably the worst thing that you could imagine. He's a new dad, he's fresh into this family life, and then to imagine all of that being taken away out of nowhere, that would suck so bad. And this song is about that, and it sounds how it does. The very first line says, "I can feel my saturation leaving me slowly," which completely contrasts with what we've seen from the album, which is so overly saturated. He wrote Shy Away as a song to motivate his brother to get into music. I feel like it's one of those more personal songs rather than something that gives a story. The Outside starts with the line, "I'll tape my eyes so I don't fall asleep again," which is interesting because if you remember from before the hiatus, all the lines were about going to sleep. You're still sleeping, time to wake up. So he's saying, "I'll tape my eyes so I don't fall asleep again." It's kind of a little bit of a callback to that time. And as we will see, this line also maybe comes up in the future. And this song could also be going back into that idea of fitting into mainstream. Again, this is something that comes up through a lot of their music, is trying to stay in their own bubble and trying to branch out, and the constant pressure that they feel. At one point, they were topping the charts with Blurryface. Those songs were so popular, but the music industry moves really quick, and maybe he's moving outside of what's popular now. Maybe he's not up there anymore. Tyler did talk about how he wanted this album to sound less cryptic than the other ones. He didn't want the lyrics to have so much hidden meaning behind them. He was just focused on putting out good songs. And I'm sure there are still ways to take out a lot from these songs, even though he says that he wasn't trying to do it, but I'm just touching on the things that I know come up later. I'm trying to focus on the big stuff. I don't know. I feel so bad for potentially missing something. I don't want to accidentally skip over something that somebody thought was really important. But I'm just one guy. I can't do it all. Never Take It has the line, "They keep lying through their fake teeth," which maybe could be talking about the Bishops, because the song also says they're trying hard to weaponize you and I. We still don't really know what the Bishops do. We obviously know that they smear people and that there are the glorified. We know that they do something that is not great, but we don't know the specifics of vialism yet. You can tell that it's not a great thing, but I feel like we haven't really gotten that much information about what it is, so it's kind of hard to take these lyrics and to tell you what you need to know with them, because I feel like we're not at that point, but it's just something to keep in mind, that those lyrics might be important. Also, that phrase goes along with the letter 02203 Moon 17, which we'll see in a little bit. This album is only 11 songs, their other albums are like 14, but the last two have a very different vibe from the rest of them. They're a lot less light and a lot less fun. The 10th song is No Chances, which, by the way, side note, seeing that song live, oh, it's so good. That song was meant to be performed live. But this song says, "We come for you, no chances," which is something that we also heard the hosts in the live stream saying. Because like I said, the live stream was presented like a TV show, so there are two TV hosts, and one of the things that they say in it is that line. Moving on to the last song of Scaled and Icy, we have Redecorate. And this song starts with a line that was in one of the earlier Clancy letters. It says, "There was a wonderful structure to the city, and it put my cares to rest." Which some people say that this song is either about or from Clancy, which makes the whole thing so much sadder. It has the same vibe. If you know Mitski, Last Words of a Shooting Star, this song is that. It also seems to include the experiences of multiple people. The song starts off with taking inventory of his life, but then each verse seems to be talking about different people. The second one says she had plans to change her name, just not the traditional way. So we have different people, but also changing your name not in the traditional way. To me, that line was transcoded, but that's just me. I've also seen people explain it in probably a more rational way by saying that the traditional way would maybe be to get married, or at least to change your name legally. So to change your name not in the traditional way would be to maybe use a secret name or a code name or something like that. And this song also brings us the line "Scaled Back and Isolated," which is a longer version of the title Scaled and Icy. On July 8th, 2021, we get a music video for the song Saturday. I didn't really talk about that song, but it's a pretty upbeat party type of song. And in this music video, we get what appears to be a group of bishops running around on a ship, and Tyler and Josh are performing. There are a group of people that are being led onto the ship, and then it goes under the water. We see Tyler and Josh with a band performing for this group of people as they travel underwater. And then a little bit past halfway through the video, there's a giant serpent in the water behind them that crashes into the ship. The dragon had glowing yellow eyes, which I'm gonna talk about a lot because earlier we saw that the hosts of the live stream had yellow eyes. But this dragon with yellow glowing eyes crashes into the ship and breaks it open, and Tyler, Josh, and some of the members of the party are able to swim to the surface of the water, where the dragon swims under them instead of continuing the attack. It just seems to move on. At first glance, to me at least, this video brought a lot more questions than answers, but you don't get a clear explanation until almost a year later. Stuff like, where were they performing? Who is this group of people? Why did the dragon attack? Why did the dragon not continue its attack? What do the glowing eyes mean? There are lots of things here that you don't really know that much. I'm sure you could piece some things together at this point if you've been following along pretty closely. If you've been taking your notes, you may be able to figure some things out. And then the Takeover Tour, which was 35 shows, starts on September 21st. March 16, 2022 is a very exciting day because DMA, or the website that had been account terminated for, at this point, almost a year, finally got all of its content back, plus a new post. 02203 Moon 16 has a larger map of the continent of Trench, which is showing more of the world than we had ever seen before. There's a compass that shows us that we are still oriented with east being up, and you can see that above Dema, above the city of Dema, is the entire continent of Trench, and below that is Port Vile, which could be inspired from the name Vialism, and then southeast-ish leads to an island called Voltsoy, which people notice translates to Violent Island, which could be a reference to the song Migraine that says behind my eyelids are islands of violence. So there's lots of little things to notice from this map. And then the next day, a teaser was posted for the song The Outside with a letter from Clancy that detailed parts of the past couple of years. 02203 Moon 17 is the first post signed off by Clancy in over 3 years, and it's the first time we've heard from him since all of this messaging that's saying he's dead. The file name is Isolated, which could either be a reference to Scaled Back and Isolated as the album as a whole, or Scaled Back and Isolated specifically from Redecorate, because that song could be talking from or about Clancy. This letter is pretty long, and it changes a lot about how we have to view everything that we've been seeing. I feel like throughout Trench, Clancy was kind of our reliable narrator. He was telling us how things were from inside of Dema. He was giving us this inside perspective. And once he left, we just had to take everything at face value. So now we're kind of getting that insider look into what Scaled and Icy was, for him at least. This letter catches us up on the entire past 3 years, summarizing the entire Scaled and Icy process and the live stream and the music videos for both Saturday and The Outside, which we haven't even gotten a music video for The Outside yet, but this letter very much sets us up for it. It starts off by saying that the bishops took away Clancy's ability to write, which immediately reminded me of the line in Jumpsuit that talks about you'll have to break both of my hands, taking away this creative expression. They took away his ability to write these letters and to get his word out to whoever he was writing to. Because that's another thing, is we don't really know who those letters were for, or maybe they were just for himself and somebody found them. I don't know. Regardless, they had taken away his ability to write. He was led through the halls of Dema and encountered a blue door, and he was led into a room where he was allowed to create, and this was the only place he was allowed to create things in. The bishops proposed that Clancy begins working on stuff for a TV show, but he was being controlled in this way because he had been known for his schemes and his outbursts from within the city. And that struck me as being pretty odd because from what we know of Clancy, he's kind of reserved. He was pretty scared. He didn't know what he was getting into or where he was going. And when he saw Nico and Tyler and everything that went on in Trench, he was pretty afraid and he was timid and he didn't really know what he wanted to do. So the idea that now Clancy is somebody who's having outbursts and schemes and he's well known throughout the city, either he's changed a lot in the past 3 years or this is not the same person. Every day, Clancy is led through this blue door and into his designated creative space, and the blue door is never mentioned in any of their songs, but it is seen in some of the concert promotional material. They also come out of it when they are actually performing on stage. But I also found the phrase designated creative space to be pretty significant because it feels so contradictory to be confining imagination. To say you can create, but only if it's right here. It doesn't feel right. On show day, they had him dress up, but everything about the show was a blur of colors and chaos, and he was very quickly returned to his cell. Dema decided that Clancy was useful and requested that he perform at the annual assemblage of the Glorified. If you're not following where we're at with the actual timeline, the show that they're talking about maybe was the live stream that had happened, the TV show. And now, the annual assemblage of the Glorified, we can see, is the Saturday music video where Tyler is performing on the ship in front of this group of people. And it is a small detail, but it's worth noting that in the previous letter where they had mentioned the annual assemblage was spelled with an A, B-L-A-G-E. In this letter, it's spelled B-L-E-D-G-E, so it's a tiny detail, and it could just be that the person writing was in a hurry or misspelled something. Human error, these things happen. But it also could mean that somebody else is writing this, somebody else is spelling it, and they spelled it a different way. We have the line, "I knew those weren't the real bishops on that ship, but it was crossed out on the page." Maybe he just didn't want to follow that line of thought because he had to keep moving through the letter, because it also tells us that the people that were on that ship that were running the show are not the real bishops, but they were people dressed up as bishops. He writes that he needs to keep up with the torchbearer, which from pretty much all of the music videos, you've seen the banditos carrying torches with them, but specifically Josh. We'll see this in the future content, but Josh normally has a torch, and he's also kind of the one leading the banditos. I know at one point I did say that it seems like Tyler is sort of in control and that Tyler is leading them, but even before Tyler was there, Josh still very much seemed like he was the one in control. He's the one that came up and confronted Tyler when they were making their escape, and he's the one that's walking down the cliff with them. Like, he's always at the front of this group, and yes, he is sometimes alongside Tyler, but before Tyler was there, he was still in charge. I'm only saying that because it feels like so much of this conversation is surrounding Tyler because he's the one that writes the music, he's the one that puts it out, he's the one that came up with a lot of this story. And I don't want to make it seem like we're just not talking about Josh at all, because Josh is also obviously a part of the band and he is a part of the story. He's in the music videos, like he is his own character. And I don't want to make it seem like he's unimportant. I just don't want anybody watching this to feel like I'm completely disregarding him, because that's not the case. But anyways, back to the letter and the Saturday music video. While performing on the ship, there was an attack that left a lot of people injured or killed, but Clancy was spared. We already know of somebody that was pretty confident in their escapes, and we know of somebody that was sort of leading the banditos, leading the rebels. And we know of somebody that was performing on a TV show, and we know of somebody that survived the Saturday attack. Clancy writes that he washed up on an island and had a feeling that this new area would give him some much needed answers. The letter is signed off in usual Clancy fashion, but something is different, right? This doesn't seem like the same Clancy that we've been reading from. And that's because when we were reading about the description of the Jumpsuit music video from Clancy, he was an observer. He was looking down into Trench and he was watching as Tyler was getting approached by Nico, and he could explain how his feelings were without knowing anything about the situation down there. In this letter, However, it seems like we're getting a direct account of everything that happened from Tyler's perspective, but it's still signed off as Clancy. There are also little details, like some fans had pointed out inconsistencies with the handwriting, like an I being cursive versus not in different letters. I didn't see it as enough of an inconsistency to point out like all the specifics here, but it is something to think about. And then obviously we have the misspelling of assemblage, and we have the different descriptions of the characters and of the everything before pointed to Clancy being somebody other. Everything from this points to Tyler being Clancy. But the big idea is not that Tyler has always been Clancy, because as we saw from the jumpsuit thing, Clancy was somebody else. Clancy was looking down and being this third-person observer rather than being Tyler in the moment. So this letter leads to the idea that Tyler became Clancy. That maybe Tyler is using Clancy as a pseudonym, or maybe multiple people are using it. That Clancy is just this bigger identity, which then obviously brings the question of why is Tyler doing this, or specifically why is he doing it now, and what does it mean for him, and what happened to the real Clancy, the one that we had grown attached to from the earlier letters. And I will say my one confusion that comes from this letter is when Clancy is writing about the bishops, because he writes that he recognized Keon's from his voice and seemed relieved that he was around, and later makes note of the fact that one of the bishops seems to always be missing and that he would have sensed him if he was around. And that part is confusing to me because Clancy knows who Keon's is, because that's his bishop, that's the one that he grew up with, or the one that he respected and the one that he worked for, all of that. I don't know if Tyler knows the rest of the bishops, and I don't know why Tyler would make note of Keon specifically, so that for me felt like the old Clancy. That's the one part that feels like the old Clancy, but the rest doesn't align with what we know. So it's a lot to consider, right? But clearly something has changed here. On March 18th, we get 2 posts to the Clancy website, as well as the music video for the song The Outside. Post 02203 Moon 18 is an image titled Weapon with an illustration of a figure holding antlers over their head. It is a handwritten thing, so there's lots of little tiny details scattered across the page, but one of the images has a caption that translates to psychokinesis, and bottom text that says, "Seize available vessel at Voltsoy Eastern Cove. Intercept bishops. Glorious gone equals available vessel. Bishops control the available vessel. Intercept and seize, they will make you a weapon. If the glorious gone are glorified who have died," maybe specifically by bishop hands, "and the glorious gone are available vessels." Even this alone gives us a lot of context for maybe what vialism is or what the bishops are working towards, right? There are also letters in the top corner of the image, which if you unscramble them, it says "seize Keon's." So things are not looking so good for the Fourth Right Bishop. And then a couple hours after this document was posted, we get the Outside video and a letter from Clancy. Starting with the song, The Outside is the final music video that we get from this album, and it also came way later than everything else. But it wraps up the visuals for this album, and it also sets us up for everything that's to come. It starts off by reminding us of the Saturday music video where we see the dragon with the yellow eyes, and then this fades to one of the bishops, also with glowing yellow eyes, holding antlers above his head in the same way that we saw from the drawing a couple hours earlier. We watch as this bishop gets surrounded by the other 8, and then they attack and kill him, which also, we see that this seems to kill the dragon. Both of their glowing yellow eyes go out. And I'm gonna spoil something here, just looking back, because maybe it was obvious. I had no clue, and I don't know how people possibly could know this, but I don't know. I just assumed that this bishop was Nico. This bishop that we see being killed is Keon's. I don't know if that "seize Keon's" message is the only thing that we got that would let us know that that was specifically Keon's, but it seems like holding these antlers gives the bishops the power to control or connect in some way with something else. Because when he died, the dragon died as well, or at least it looks that way. And when you think about what this means from the previous music video, if the yellow eyes means that the dragon is being controlled by Keon's drove that dragon into the ship that was being run by people who were looking like bishops. And we know from the other letter that they were not the actual bishops, right? But it was a bishop-run ship. And Keon's went against them and controlled a dragon to destroy it, and obviously that means he was also saving Clancy. It tells us a lot about Keon's, but also about the bishop power. The music video for The Outside starts with Tyler crawling out of the ocean and onto an island, which if you remember from the last letter that we got, that's exactly what he said was happening. So we already got this idea, where Clancy had said that he felt like this is where he was going to get some answers. Josh walks over, throws him a hat, and starts pulling him to his feet before leading the way with his torch. Follow the torchbearer, here he is. They see Ned from the Chlorian video. They see Ned, and they chase him through the wilderness until it gets dark out, where they find a cave hidden in the side of a mountain. I saw some people saying that they heard the sounds from Migraine here, which I have no clue, but that would be because Violent Island. I personally didn't hear it, but that would be a cool little Easter egg if it was there. Tyler comes across multiple Neds as he's going into this cave, and he chases them through tunnels until he reaches a campfire that's surrounded by 8 of them. And Tyler seems to feel comfortable. He's not afraid that there are 8 Neds, which most of us would be, because who is Ned? Imagine just encountering one of those. But Tyler is chill with it. He sits down at the campfire with them. He shares a drink. There's one more Ned that runs from a different passageway, so that gives us 9 total. 9 Neds, 9 bishops. Interesting. Tyler gets up and follows the 9th outside, and then we can see that Ned has antlers that are similar to what was being used by the bishop to control the dragon, and also what we saw from the drawing. And it is worth mentioning that he's the only one with horns, which makes me wonder, did he grow them back after that bishop died? Like all the other Neds had antlers, but they're being used by the surviving bishops, and this one got his back because his bishop had died. Regardless, this one has antlers. He takes them off and he offers them to Tyler. Tyler takes them, and there are Neds surrounding him up on the cliff that show him how to use it by holding it up to his head. They're all encouraging him to use this power, and then Tyler controls the body of the fallen bishop. So it seems like this power is allowing people to control dead bodies, which also means that the dragon was already dead before all of this happened. Tyler possesses the body of the fallen bishop and uses it to destroy one of the glowing pillars that had been surrounding him, and then the video ends with Tyler and Josh in the dark, and as they look off into the beyond, which we know they're on an island, so they're looking out to the sea. And as they're looking out, the horizon fills with torchlight from across the water. We move away from Tyler and Josh and focus in on 2 figures on the other side, and as they turn around and they look behind them, we see that Dema is alight with blue flame, which had come out of the neon pillar that Tyler broke earlier. And then at the very end, this video flashes between the figures at the end of the Nico and the Niners video with the 2 figures that are looking back at the city, which is maybe suggesting that these are the same 2 people, even though they don't look that similar. So I don't know if it's saying that these are the exact 2 people that we had seen before, like they were left with the stuff from the Banditos and now they've joined the rebellion, or if it's just suggesting that the reach has gone from that to now this whole island full of torchlight. I don't know. It just doesn't look like the same people, but the idea is that they've allowed the rebellion to spread this far. Because it's been 4 years since the Nico and the Niners video, and they're still going. The rebellion is still growing. And with this video and the ways that Ned's tied to bishops, you also have to think about what does that actually mean? If Ned represents creativity and the bishops are using those antlers for power, they're taking something from the embodiment of creativity and using it as a means of control for what? For themselves, right? Like they're doing whatever they're doing for personal gain. Some people theorize that each Ned is the opposite of a bishop because I haven't really mentioned it. It's not really super relevant, but people have said that each bishop represents a different type of negative emotion. So maybe each Ned represents a different opposite positive feeling. I don't really know. I have no thoughts or theories on Ned, so I'll leave it at that, you know, we're gonna keep going. But when the music video came out, we also got a letter from Clancy, and this one starts off by describing the antlers and the power that we had just seen. We learn that the bishops have the ability to control bodies, but for some reason, this power can reach Clancy even though he's not dead. There's a mention of honorable citizens who have achieved the glorious gone in order to act as vessels for the power of the bishops. And remember what we said about the glorification of suicide. So just from that alone, there are people killing themselves in order to act as available dead body vessels that the bishops can use. That's what's being encouraged here. The bishops want to control bodies. They're encouraging the annual assemblage of glorified. They want people to become glorious gone for their own benefit. And also obviously the use of the word vessel is interesting because that was the name of one of their early albums, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's just a cool thing. I cannot go back and tie this all into the Vessel album. I just can't. But also specifically the use of the word achieved for achieved the glorious gone is interesting because it for sure lets us know that that is the goal. You are encouraged to die in order to become a vessel for the bishops. This is seen as a positive thing, at least from within the city. The letter points out different moments that we've seen and questions whether or not people had been seized throughout them all. He points out stuff like the decaying hosts on the television show and the robed figures that commanded the ship. They might have seemed like they were a part of the bishop's work, but really those were dead bodies that were being controlled by the bishops. The hosts in the credits were listed as Danny Liston and Sally Secarver. Those were the 2 bishops. 2 bishop names, right? Liston and Secarver. And throughout the live stream, we see them getting more beaten up or maybe more rotted. I don't know, maybe they're dead bodies that are slowly decaying on stream. He also mentions how he had the blood red vision, dreams of flying, and an out-of-body account of the rider in the river, which is confusing to me because that's talking about the jumpsuit video, which I had said was confusing because how Clancy is observing Tyler and then becoming Tyler, but is it saying out of body as in Tyler was still the author of that letter, but he was experiencing it from somewhere? I don't really understand. Again, he wonders why the bishops are able to seize him if he's in his original life. If he's still not dead, why can they control him? Also, through this, we learn that the bishops might be immortal, like they're extending their lifetimes by using these bodies. And then the final paragraph of the letter says, "This small eerie island has made me a weapon. We both believe that we can use it to change the momentum of the war. Now we must return to the mainland where they should be there to receive us." In the last video, he already mentioned needing to keep up with the Torchbearer, and in this, it says, "It's been years since he last spoke with them. I hope they've not lost faith in the Torchbearer's plan." To me, that seems like talking about the kids from Nico and the Niners and how they had found the stuff from the Banditos, and then hoping that they have continued the efforts of the rebellion from within Dema so that people are ready. I have no clue if that's what it's talking about because we don't see what happens to those kids, but from the way that it pans out and shows the flashing between the two, that's what I took away at least. 4 years has passed since the end of the Nico and the Niners videos, so are they still following the Torchbearer's plan? Are they still doing what Josh wanted them to do? Because he's the one that left that stuff. It was his drums. And maybe Clancy is just hoping that they're still passionate about the cause and that they're still willing to fight with the rebellion. So from this, we know about the power that the bishops have. We know what they're doing, what vialism is, and we know that the rebellion is well on its way. Clancy and the Torchbearer just have to return to the mainland where everybody else will be willing to receive them. On June 25th, the takeover tour ends, but then less than a month later, on August 18th, the Icy tour begins. This tour was only 22 shows and it went until September 24th, but it does hold a special place in my heart because that is the one that I went to. It was a great show. I had such a good time being there. Even though I was far away from the stage, I felt like maybe that would take away from my experience, but genuinely just being in the same room as everybody else was so special because, like I've been saying, so much of what this band does is based on the fan energy. So even if I wasn't super close to the stage, I was more invested in seeing how everybody else reacted to what they were doing. It was really special. If you're able to, I'd highly recommend going to their live shows. I know they're way expensive this time, but if you find yourself in a position to be able to see them live, it's a great time. And then this is where I have maybe the largest gap in my information because I don't know if I missed something or if they were just resting or if they were getting ready for everything they're about to drop on us, but I don't have any updates here for over a year, and there were random smaller performances or, you know, little things that they had posted, but nothing really worth talking about. Anything that they did came with vague mentions of new music coming soon, but that was about it. My next update comes from November 23rd, 2023, where the 21 Pilots YouTube channel posted a 10-hour-long Ned's Cozy Fireplace, and at first this seems like another harmless little festive thing, similar to the Christmas Saves the Year thing, where when you first look at it, it just seems like a little holiday content, but then you look closer and there are maybe some Easter eggs. The video is just playing quiet versions of their songs. There's not really much to take away from the audio, but fans notice some hints about the story within the background. I'm not going to get into all of the potential theories that people had made from what they saw here, but there was a letter in the back that was written from Ned. There was a potential hidden release date for new content hidden within the bookshelves where the books were spaced 2/9, February 29th. There was stuff where Ned would look at the TV or the TV would be on or something and they noticed that it was at a specific timestamp. There's lots of little details here. Again, something you can look up in your own time. But the thing that people did guess correctly is the bookshelf, the books 2/9, February 29th. And they guessed that new music, or maybe something related to a new album, would be coming out February 29th, 2024. And I cannot believe we've made it. But we're at Clancy.
Diese kleine unheimliche Insel hat mich zu einer Waffe gemacht. Wir glauben beide,
Welcome to Clancy. No intricate outfit or background for this because we're in present day now, we're caught up. So we're kind of just gonna have to see what comes next. I figured we'd just go back to where we started. But on February 15th, 2024, we start seeing some more cryptic behavior from the band again after that long year off. All of their older album covers on streaming services switched to have tape, red duct tape over the eyes of the figures. So for Vessel, there's red tape over both of the eyes of the grandparents. For Trench, the vulture has tape over its eyes. Skeleton I see obviously is the dragon, but Blurryface has one of the circles with tape over it. And if you remember, each of those circles correlates with one of the bishops, and guess which circle that one is? It's Keon's. Keon's who we saw killed in the outside video. But it also reminded me of the line from the outside, "I'll tape my eyes so I don't fall asleep again," which earlier we had talked about how that ties into the hiatus and how we were going to sleep and now it's time to wake up, taping your eyes so that doesn't happen again. But now there's literal tape on the eyes of these figures. And it was around this time, I believe 1,500 random fans received actual physical mail from Clancy and Dema. There were 4 documents that got sent out with a secret message that says "still alive," which could be telling us that the Clancy messaging that had been saying Clancy is dead for so long, maybe that's not right, maybe Clancy is still alive. And in these documents there were also bolded letters that represented 229, again, the idea that we're getting something new on February 29th. Really quickly, we're gonna go over the physical mail that people received. There were 4 papers, either with messages from Dema or Clancy. The first document describes an investigation into Clancy, urging anyone with knowledge of where he is to come forward. It's pushing the inhabitants of Dema to do their duty and bring enemies of vialism to justice. That's what the banditos are, enemies to vialism. The next document addresses those who have had access to the DMA or links without permission, clarifying that the document should not be disclosed without approval from the bishops or legal authority. And this is where there are bolded letters that spell out "still alive." But also on the bottom of this document has a handwritten "How did you find dema.org.info," the big URL that we got at the very beginning. The third document is the actual letter from Clancy where he says he's not as scared as he used to be. He learned about the bishop's power and he started to feel stronger and less afraid. It says he hopes to inspire and to create an inferno, and the hidden message in this is not spelled out so much as it is counted. This is where we get the 229. Each line of the message has one single bolded letter, the second, the second, the ninth, the second, the second, the ninth, and if you go all the way down, it's the same for the whole message. And then the fourth document is another map of Trench, which added the Paladin Strait by Voltsoy, the place in between Trench and Dema and then Voltsoy where we have seen Tyler and Josh. They're gonna have to cross the Paladin Strait to get back to the mainland. And in the letter, Clancy says they'll have to cross the strait to get to a finish line. Which I will say also, the track list for this album has come out, and one of the songs on the album is called Paladin Strait. And then, on February 22nd, 1 week before this mystery date, everything was laid out for us. The band releases a 4-minute video titled "I Am Clancy," that detailed Tyler's journey through the world and all of the lore of the past 2 albums that people have been working so hard to figure out. Everything that's been cryptic and hidden within their content is now just put out in front of us, which makes sense because if they're putting out this new album and it's entirely lore-based, you have to be really in it to even understand what the music is. But it is pretty wild to think about how long they've been holding on to all of these secrets and how slowly they've been drip-feeding it to us, and now they're just so willing to put it all out there. So we're gonna go through this video pretty much line by line, and we're gonna break it all down. The video starts off with our narrator saying that he's stuck in a cycle and cannot escape Dema, but each attempt he's slowly getting better. Nico, aka Blurryface, is the leader of the 9 bishops that control the city, and that's the one that always catches him. He explains that the religion of the city is called vialism, and it promotes the idea that self-destruction is the only way to paradise. This is basically the core reason that the bishops are the bad guys here and why they're rebelling, because vialism, like we've been talking about, is the glorification of suicide, but we know that the real reason the bishops are pushing this whole religion is so that they can have the dead bodies to control. Which again, this is why I think that Neon Gravestones is the most important song of the Trench album. I know we're kind of going way back to talk about that, but it just really stuck with me, especially hearing all this again, because that song very much talks about something that's real in society. It's trying to push us to celebrate and honor life instead. And in the Nico and the Niners video, you can see the bishops making glass poles and eventually these big rectangles, which are the neon gravestones. It seems like the foundation of the lights that we're seeing that surround the entire city, they're making that, and it's something that's special and it's something that's honored and it's something that you want to achieve. The entire city is surrounded by gravestones of the glorified, but it's the idea that you're worth more when you're dead. The city is so dark and so sad, but then you have these bright neon lights and it almost seems like that's how you're more beneficial. You can do more good by being dead. And obviously you're more beneficial to the bishops that way as well because they're able to use you. But also, like I was saying before, the entire message of 21 Pilots has always been to fight the voice in your head that's telling you to give up. Over a decade, this band has been talking about suicide and fighting to stay alive even when it's hard. And Neon Gravestones is probably the most direct conversation that we're having about that topic, at least within this world. But it makes me so mad to see that people were arguing and saying that that song maybe shouldn't be on the album because that's exactly what they've been focusing on. It just seems like it matters so much because everything about vialism goes along with that song, goes along with what they've been talking about for their entire career. Going back to the Clancy video, it talks about how the bishops have a power that allows them to control the bodies of others, but only for those who have passed away, and they can only control the bodies for a short period of time. We learn that the narrator is an exception to this rule, suggesting that the bishops are able to seize him even though he's not dead, which is something that we already know from the letters. I mean, to be fair, we already know most of this from the letters, it's just putting it all in one place so that we're all on the same page. Also, I'm not sure where this came from, I'm not sure who said this or why, but I saw somebody mentioning how when Tyler is possessed, his eyes are red versus the yellow that we've seen from everything else, which maybe is because he's the exception, but that explains the character with the deep voice in the Blurryface album, with Tyler with the red eyes and Stressed Out and whatever other songs. I don't know if there's anything that says it more directly or if it's just that one little section that we were talking about earlier where he was piecing together all the moments that people had been seized. Because that's the other thing, is seizing refers to possessing the other people using this power. So when it said seize Keon's, the first time I read that I thought it meant like take him, like capture him, but really it's saying possess him. And then we get into an explanation of the music videos that we've been watching. So the line, "I tricked Nico into taking me outside of the walls, I created a fiery diversion, I escaped," is leading us through Heavy Dirty Soul, where he's going in the car. We can't see the driver, we know now that the driver was Nico. He created a fiery diversion, he literally set the car on fire, and then he grabbed his jacket out, jumpsuit starts, he escapes. It says, "The drag path was different, I saw them, they watched me, the banditos," which is describing Tyler's experience in the jumpsuit video. Nico catches him, brings him back to Dema, and it says, "Shortly after being back inside the walls, my new people got me out, they needed me for something," which is, of course, describing Nico and the Niners, where Josh and the rest of the banditos come in and save Tyler. "They brought me back in, taught me their colors, but the cycle was too strong, I was recaptured," is showing Levitate, where he's sitting in their camp, and then by the end of it, those bishop hands come and grab him and pull him back. It's just emphasizing his inability to escape Dema. They always get him in the end. "Word got around, I became known to Dema, they made me perform for them," is talking about Skilled and Icy as a whole, but moving into the Saturday music video. All of the content that they put out during this time, all of the music and all of the music videos and all of the performances that we saw, they were all controlled by Dema in order to take advantage of Tyler. The bishops were using this leader of the rebellion, and they were using his power against him. It says, "Then Nico was betrayed, and I escaped again," which is talking about the end of Saturday and the start of the Outside, where we see the bishops killing Keon's because Keon's had betrayed Nico. Keon's allowed them to escape. From this time, I found myself in a new place to "They wielded from the towers." I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit. You might have to watch the whole I Am Clancy video, which I would recommend, because that's really the thing that tells us all of this, just a little less in depth. But that whole section is talking about the Outside music video with Tyler washing up onto the island, finding the horns, and learning how to control the bodies in the same way that the bishops have, which is something that we need to talk about, because the whole thing that they're fighting is vialism, is the bishops using these bodies. And then Tyler or Clancy or whatever is using the same power. It doesn't feel right, does it? Because who's to say that he's using this power in the correct way? But anyways, the final lines of this video: "I am a citizen, I am an exception, I am returning to Trench, I am Clancy." And that brings us into this new album. February 28th brings us an announcement for the upcoming single Overcompensate and also a letter from Clancy. The file name is Maniac Clay, which unscrambles to I Am Clancy, but there's an extra A, so maybe I Am A Clancy? The letter goes into the experience of the rebels, saying the banditos have lived their rebellion and a resistance is growing inside the concrete walls. It's like what we were talking about earlier, how while they were away, the people that are still inside the city are getting ready for whatever's coming next. And the letter ends with him saying that they march in the morning and the revolution will arrive with the sun. Again, this is February 28th, so we already knew that something was going to be coming the next day, but this letter just confirms it. And then the final letter from Clancy that I have to talk about here is 02402 Moon 28. In this message, there are bolded letters that spell out the word flyby, and he writes that he found a way in, which presumably this is into Dema, that the bishops will never suspect. He's able to reach those inside with eyes that see beyond. He's going to teach what he's learned, taking away the constructs that Dema has presented, everything that he's learned from his time outside. And the letter ends with the phrase, "We will take it back," which, as we know from the Outside video with the bishops and the vessels with the glowing yellow eyes when they're being seized, it's possible that Tyler is going to be using this power. He's using those eyes to see into the city, even though physically he's not really there. He's going to use the actual power of the bishops against them. And I will say, these two letters aren't signed off by anybody. All the other ones had been signed off by Clancy, so We don't even really know for sure who's saying this, but going off of everything that we know, we're kind of just gonna assume that it is. And then the next day, as predicted, we get the Overcompensate music video. Because obviously the album isn't out yet, we're gonna take in the lyrics and the video all at once, just as they're coming out. The video starts off with dialogue from other languages, but it translates to a line from one of Clancy's letters, 02203 Moon 18, that says, "The small eerie island has made me a weapon. We both believe we can use it to change the momentum of the war." It's the end of one of the most recent letters that we had read, where the power of the bishops has turned him into a weapon. He's going to use that against them. The video starts by panning over water and a map of Voltsoy back to the mainland. Going across the Paladin Strait, it's showing us the journey that they're going to have to take to get back to where everybody else is. We fly into the center of the city, and the phrase "Welcome back to Trench" plays. This makes me so happy every single time that it plays, because it's just so special to hear that again, to know that we were away with Skilled and Icy and with everything that's been happening, and now welcome back. They're finally coming back, and now they're able to take control. There was a behind-the-scenes video where Tyler had been talking about how the big plan of everything that they were doing was always to get back to red, but now to take control of that color rather than seeing it as something that they have to fight against. Tyler sings the line that we had heard earlier from Bandito, "I created this world to feel some control, destroy it if I want." We see two different scenes. We see Tyler and Josh in what looks like an attic or something, and Tyler's wearing a mask over most of his face, and the other space is Tyler and Josh in front of an auditorium full of people that are wearing gray. Josh has a collar on that translates to torchbearer. As Tyler walks into the auditorium, he's confident. He knows how to take up space. His yellow Bandito tape that he had on his shoulders has been replaced with red. I'm not going to break down the entire song, but I just couldn't help but talk about it because it was so cool to have new content to talk about. He sings "I fly by the dangerous bend" symbol, which at first, when he's doing this motion with his hands, it kind of looks like the 21 Pilots symbol. That's not what it's referring to. The dangerous bend symbol is a traffic symbol used in Europe, and it is something that came from the Bourbaki group. Tyler is saying he moves without caution. He flies by the dangerous bend symbol. He's maybe growing too confident, and he's overcompensating for all the time that he hasn't been. We're finally having the whole story wrapped up, but is Tyler staying true to himself, or is he overcompensating and maybe turning into somebody else? In the background of the song, there's also a voice saying, "Wait, what? Wait, what?" Which, to me, it kind of feels like people are shocked by the direction that he's taking. It feels like the listeners are taken aback by his sudden change in personality. "I fly by the dangerous bend symbol," and they're like, "Whoa, hold on a second." In the second verse, Tyler flat out says, "I am Clancy." He's done running, and he's ready to own up to the title and face whatever's coming next, dead or alive. We see another room of Tyler in front of an audience while projections of the map of Dema and other documents that we've seen pop up on the screen behind them, because Tyler is teaching the citizens of Dema how they escaped the city and what it is that they're actually fighting against. The crowd changes out of their gray clothes and into jackets that are similar to what Tyler is wearing, but some of them have red tape, some of them have yellow. And I saw this theory that said the meaning behind these different colors, where yellow and the Banditos leads more towards positivity and opposition and focusing on escaping the city. Their priority is saving themselves rather than defeating the evil that is Dema or the bishops. On the other hand, red is based on totally destroying the bishops and starting over, reclaiming that color not only to escape, but to completely destroy everything that had been challenging them. At the end of the video, Tyler collapses in a car radio-esque drop, but when the citizens pull off his mask, it's revealed that the person that was leading them wasn't really Tyler. It was kind of just some person, and there are some theories that say that maybe this is Clancy that was unmasked. I don't know, to me that just seems way too underwhelming to have a whole album titled Clancy, and then the real Clancy that we have been following is just dead on the ground, and it's just a super fast unmasking and then we move on. That doesn't feel right to me. But after that drop, we go to the real Tyler and Josh, where Tyler had been seizing this body from wherever they are. They're pulling a boat out of the water, presumably they're returning to the mainland, and then red, maybe fire, shines off of Tyler's face, and he gives a little bit of a smile before the video fades to black, and it could mean that he's happy to be back, but it also feels a little bit malicious to me, like he's happy he was using that power. I don't know if it's meant to be interpreted that way, but it's a little bit unsettling to see, because again, the rebellion is fighting against vialism, so it's just a little bit concerning to see Tyler using the power that is fueling that religion and the power that the bishops have. Obviously, it is helpful for him to be able to reach the city without being physically in there, but at what point is it too much? At what point is he gonna go too far? Because also, who was he seizing? That brings a whole other set of questions, but regardless, whoever it was, that was a body. that he had been seizing, a dead body that he was controlling. And then I also wrote, I love the contradiction between maybe overcompensate. We won't hesitate to maybe overcompensate because it's performed with such confidence and he's using this power that has dominated the city for so long. It seems like he's in complete control, but there's also this level of uncertainty with every choice. Maybe and overcompensate don't go together. Overcompensate suggests that you're just going all in, you're really going for it, and you're not holding back, but there's still that maybe. It just makes the whole song feel like he is in control, he is coming back, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. On March 15th, Tyler confirms on Twitter that each of the songs on the album is going to have a music video. There's going to be 14 music videos that come out, which is such an ambitious thing to announce and such an ambitious thing to work for, but I love the idea that each element of the story is going to have visuals to go alongside it, and it's going to give a much more complete picture once everything is out. And then on March 27th, 2024, we get the music video for the song Next Semester. And along with this, the band announced the CLANCY World Tour. I cannot explain to you how special the song Next Semester is to me. Within 10 days of that song coming out, it became my third most listened to song out of the past 12 months. This song is what got me interested in this entire topic to begin with, and I genuinely have not wanted to listen to any other music besides what they're putting out since it came out. The Next Semester video isn't set in the trench world, it's just a regular everyday situation instead of deep within the city of Dema. The music video starts with Tyler running away from headlights before it pans to the boys performing on what seems to be a pretty intimate venue. It very much feels like early 2000s emo or alternative music, and it just feels really good to watch. It made me feel nostalgic for something that I hadn't experienced yet. The lyrics perfectly capture that feeling of being really anywhere, but just feeling really anxious, and I love this song so much. It fuels me up every morning, it comforts me every night. Genuinely, I cannot stop listening to it. I have never connected with a song more. At the chorus of the song, the video cuts to Tyler standing in the middle of a street as headlights move towards him, and he remembers little details of this moment in the song he sings. He remembers what he was wearing, he remembers yellow dashes in the street, and he prayed that the headlights would take him home before the driver yelled, "Get out of the road." That feeling of wanting something to happen and being so ready to give up, only to have the entire situation minimized by something who doesn't really know the dramatics of what's going on in your head. To the driver, you're kind of just an inconvenience in the road. At the second chorus of the song, the headlights drive past Tyler 4 separate times, which some people said that maybe these 4 times symbolize the 4 albums because we have Blurryface, Trench, Scaled and Icy, and then now Clancy. The first 2 times the car drives by, Tyler runs to one side. For the third time, he runs the other direction, and the fourth time he has the Clancy mask on. So Blurryface and Trench are following one path, Scaled and Icy went obviously a very different direction, and now we're at Clancy. Because when he has the Clancy mask, he also stares down the headlights for a while before running away in the same direction as Blurryface and Trench. And then the video ends with Tyler walking off of the stage while playing ukulele, which is kind of very much reminiscent of some of their older stuff. But it is so special to have kind of a song from them that feels genuine. It doesn't feel like there's much hidden within the lyrics. This is a very straightforward song. It very much feels like some of their older stuff. More than anything else, it just feels real. And then the most recent news that I had gotten as of writing the script was that there was a post from Tyler where he wrote out a list of all of the songs that he had put out, and fans were guessing that maybe this is going to be an Eras Tour type of thing where they play songs from all of their music. In mid-April, Tyler announced that all of the music videos that are going to come out are all coming out on the same day as the album release. It's all going to come out at once, which was a little scary to me because Billie Eilish is also coming out with an album on May 17th, but she's not putting out any singles before, so you're going to have a Billie Eilish album that nobody has heard before coming out on May 17th, and then you are also going to have this entire album plus all of the music videos all on one day. I was very scared for the musical online space and also for what the streaming platforms would have to endure. But then more recently, Tyler posted on social media to announce that the album is going to be pushed back just 1 week, and his reasoning was that it would allow for more time to get through all of the music videos that they had to do. On April 25th, we get a music video for the song Backslide, which this music video was directed by Josh, which is pretty cool. And I don't really feel like going too in-depth on this song, mostly because it came out after I had already written the script and I don't really feel like going into more stuff again. But there are a lot of people that are keeping up with real-time updates from really everything that's been going on. So if you want to see a more in-depth analysis of the music video or the lyrics, there are people that are really going all in right now. But I will say this music video reminded me of just how many of their music videos end up circling back around. They're all big cycles. How Heavy Dirty Soul starts with Tyler sitting in the car and it also ends that way. And then Jumpsuit again brings us back to that car where he starts off by saying it's time to wake up, and then at the end you see him getting into the trunk and he's in the same place that the music video had started from. Next Semester starts off with a view of the road and then shows them performing, and then at the end it goes back to the road and Tyler getting hunted down by these headlights. And then Backslide is Tyler at a shop, and at the end of the video he goes back to that same shop. Everything is a big cycle. Everything is going around in circles. In the same way that Tyler keeps trying to escape Dema, but the bishops always find him. He always ends up back in the same place. The song Backslide, I don't want to backslide to where I started from, but everything keeps going around. On April 26th, the band posted on Twitter with a phone number to text that said NYC May 2nd, which is maybe another complete diversion style of little concert. It's a super exclusive early performance, and the show very quickly sold out. And then on April 30th, a show was announced for May 7th in Berlin. The first one had a code Citizen, the second has the code Escapee. People are thinking there might be a couple more shows, but those are the only ones that have been announced as of recording this. I will say right now, it is May 2nd, so that first performance, that first exclusive performance is happening today. We're basically caught up in the story right now. I've talked about everything that has come out, so we're gonna wrap up by speedrunning some theories that I've heard or that I've liked, and we're gonna talk about my final thoughts, and then we'll get out of here. I will say I do love the theories that tie all of these songs and all of these new details of the world back into their older album, which I don't think that it's all been going that far back, but it is fun to see the ways that all the themes tie through. So much of their content revolves around cars, like Fake You Out and Taxi Cab, and then obviously coming up now to Next Semester, where the whole song is about a car driving up. It makes the song feel that much more real, because it's something that has been significant for so long. In Fairly Local, Tyler does this hand movement behind the glass, which is the same thing that he does in the second chorus of Overcompensate. People compared it like frame by frame, it's pretty similar. And also that video takes place in an icy room, which could, you know, icy tour. I'm gonna try my very hardest to get as many links and as many sources that I use as possible in the description, because I sifted through so much content to try and get as much information as I could and to try and understand this well enough to tell it to you. I'll link as much as I can, but there are some YouTube channels that really went all in, like Good Day Dema and Stolen Potential. Those are two accounts that are still posting regular updates right now with everything that's been going on, but they have been doing it for quite a while. Also, the thing I probably referenced more than anything else for this entire video is dmaorg.info wiki, because that lists all of the letters, and I will say for sure I went to that more than anything else to try and understand the timeline and to try and understand the story that's being told within the letters. It was a lot to look through, but that website lays it out really clearly. And then, like I kind of talked about earlier, there's a theory that I saw Good Day Dema put out a really good video on it about how Tyler isn't Clancy, or that he is Clancy now, but that doesn't mean he's always been Clancy, which is kind of the theory that I'm sticking with right now, is that Clancy is just a bigger name that Tyler has taken on. Think Mockingjay. Clancy was just a name to use in the rebellion, but that doesn't mean they need the actual Clancy to be using that name. They just need somebody who can represent Clancy as this bigger idea of leader of the rebels. Because even though Tyler has explicitly stated now that he is Clancy, there's lots of information that contradicts that statement, like the letters that are very clearly written from Clancy's perspective, while Tyler would know a lot more about Trench and everything else, when Clancy is an observer of Tyler, and they're both having completely different experiences and feelings about their surroundings. And also little details like Tyler saying that Nico was his bishop while Clancy was saying that Keon's is his bishop. Those things just don't line up. It can't have always been the same person. Maybe there never was a real single Clancy and it was just a name that was made up so everybody could anonymously share their experiences and their attempts to escape. Which I do think there was at one point one single Clancy, because for a while we were following these letters that detailed the experience of what seemed like one single person, which I guess maybe we could have just been following one of many Clancys and we were only being delivered those letters, but I choose to believe there was at one point a Clancy as an actual individual, and that name has now just been taken on maybe because we were able to see the letters, so now they're able to use that name. But if Clancy was a real person, at what point did we stop seeing the letters from the real one? Maybe when the message of Clancy is dead. Maybe that was a true statement. The real person that was Clancy is dead, and Dema was using that phrase to try and uninspire people by saying, look, your leader is dead, or the person who's writing these letters that you've been following, this person is dead. But the banditos, or the rebels, are using the name Clancy, and it lives on in that way. The name has more power than any one individual. So my final thoughts on all of this. Tyler talks a lot about how he compartmentalizes and how this music is maybe the one glimpse into that part of himself that he's trying not to focus too much on. And I feel like going through all of this helped me to realize just how much I do that myself. And it was really comforting to revisit these songs and to get a glimpse into this world that I had only been briefly introduced to when I was first a fan. Tyler was able to fully throw himself into the story, and I feel like I was really able to do the same. And Tyler in interviews had talked about how Trench was really hard to write because you're constantly having to bounce between the darkest parts in your head and then utilizing that to create something and then overcompensating and maybe feeling like you're the greatest, because obviously for a while they got really big. And it's pretty easy to let that get to your head, but then you still want the comfort of the bad feelings. It's still familiar. It's a place that you want to return to, even though maybe you know it's not the best for you, and just this constant back and forth between all of these really big feelings. I just think it's really interesting, but I'm happy that they're going to be wrapping it up and that they're finally going to get a break from this world, because it must be really draining to have to go through all of that. I mean, that's something that they're pretty explicitly saying in some of the songs from this album. It's going to be 13 songs as of right now. There are 3 that are already out and the rest come out May 24th now. This band meant so much to me so long ago, and I love that nearly 10 years later I'm still able to connect with what they're putting out. It is so great to feel so understood by so many people and to feel like you're being represented by the band and what they're putting out. I feel so lucky that I'm able to be here and that I'm able to be a part of this as it's coming out, and that I'm able to understand and that I'm able to connect with other people about all of this. It just feels so special. I can't think of anything like it. If everything goes to plan and I can actually figure out a way to condense all of this video into one final big edit, this will hopefully be coming out as a recap of everything maybe a couple days before the album if I'm lucky, so that you have time to watch it before the actual album comes out, so you have time to actually learn what you're about to be listening to. I don't know, that's my rough plan at least. I really don't think it's going to end up going that way, but I'm so excited to see what they're going to come up with and to see what the rest of this album holds, but I'm also so scared to see the whole story end. Paladin Straight is the last song on the album and then it's done. But that's all I have here. We gotta wrap this up. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. Please let me know your thoughts on any of it. If there's anything that I missed or anything that I maybe misinterpreted, please let me know. I would love to know what you guys think about all of this. With all that being said, I think we've done pretty much all that we can do here. Stay alive, stay fighting. I'll see you around.